everybody. It's another Wednesday show.
Hey, all, I'm really looking forward to this one, largely because I kind of love a cutscene. There's nothing quite like watching somebody else's carefully crafted version of a story about something that you really love to get your heart all excited and pulping. Particularly give pulping? No, that's not what I meant.
Pulping.
Not pulping. Pumping.
Pulp your heart.
Pulp my heart. Yeah, to get ourselves pumping. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Much like our previous deep dives into the various Total War Warhammer videos, this one is going to be curated by our lovely host, Mr. Loremaster of Sotek.
Yeah, so last time, the last couple, we focused primarily on just like the trailers, which, you know, like the overall faction introduction trailers, I should say. So today we're going to be delving into the intro campaign cinematics for all the races, because there's a lot of really interesting story beats to be found in those, particularly because it gets to jump us around through a lot of our favorite characters, where we'll be dealing, of course, with the advisor from the Total War Warhammer series and all of his various escapades.
Dodgy Johan.
Yeah, the dodgiest of Johans. But then in addition to that, we're also going to be it'll also take us into some of the cinematics that don't necessarily involve him, especially when you enter some of the DLCs from like pretty much all of Warhammer 2, which I believe is at the end or is at the very early part of the timeline, so he hasn't appeared yet. But the question is, I think I want to start with the Dodgy Johan stuff. But do we start with Warhammer 3 at the beginning of his story? Or do we start with what came out order with Warhammer 1, which is later in his story?
I think we should be rebels and possibly go for chronological first, because the obvious one would be to go for the order they came out. But if we go for chronological first, we get to go right back to Warhammer 3 first, and that'd be super, super fun.
Okay, so we'll do 3 first, then 1, and then we can have fun with 2, probably on a different stream, because I doubt we're gonna have enough time.
Well, we do, huh? As I said, I'm really looking forward to these, just to see where they all land. And we have also, we hope, completely fixed the sound. If you watched our previous 2 reaction streams, you'll be aware that the sound was well borked for the various adverts and trailers that we were watching. In this case, hopefully, that will be history.
Yes, indeed. Okay, and there's just one specific little cinematic I gotta grab that's a little tricky to grab, which is the...
Thanks, Hawk.
Opening... Oh, gosh darn it. A lot of people don't put it on YouTube because everybody skips it when it shows up. Which is the cinematic that appears when you open the game. Because it shows off the Tome of Fate. Actually, no, I think... Is it this one? I think it may be... Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's this one. It just doesn't have the book pulsing, which is fine. We can live without the book pulsing. Though, if anybody knows a link to that, feel free to slap it in chat or send it to me on Discord, and I'll grab it for like the actual opening. Like when you open the game, it does the thing that like blows everybody's ears out. Because CA was like, sound balancing, who needs that? So, real quick, before we get into it, also, if you haven't heard, Dark Deeds, just right here at the beginning, I think it's worth mentioning that if you're new around here, or you're just joining us for the first time for a stream, a good way to support what we do here is to pick up a board game for you and your friends and your family, which is great for any board game collectors you know in your life, or just to give for yourself. You can see it very, very shiny behind Andy back there. And it's a beautiful game made by many Warhammer legends. It was worked on by some individuals.
Andy Chambers, by Mark Gibbons, by me. There has been a heck of a lot of work put into making what could only be described as a finely crafted piece of gaming beauty, with gorgeous art that drips with flavor and a whole lot of backstabbing fun. Ever fancy being a hobgoblin? Well, you won't be a hobgoblin, you'll just be a minion to a weird and mysterious patron who is looking to take over the city, and it's just so much fun. So yeah, that's something worth having a look at.
All right. And I think with that out of the way, I can put this here and I can do the big I want to put you over here. There we go. There we go. That's what I needed. Okay. All right. So without further ado, we're gonna hop into the first cinematic.
Get in.
If I need to adjust the audio, just let me know. All right. And here
we go.
This world has been sundered by a tide of arcane energy. The winds of magic churned into a maelstrom. The Tome of Fate drew me north to find out why. It guided me to a distant fortress steeped in blood. A battle was fought there. Though long over, the spirits still lingered. In the shadow of a broken portal, the trail ended. It was here the tome conversed with the dead. They told of Ursun, the bear god of Kislev, lost in darkness. A noble prince ventured to save him, yet he strayed from the path and was corrupted by chaos. Savior became Executioner. A single shot, bound in faith forsaken, pierced Ursun's heart. And so the bear god roared. The tide that broke the world. Spirits, where lies Ursun now? Is he here in the north?
Beyond the maelstrom, in the realm of chaos, the forge of souls.
Chaos. Is he alive?
Wounded and dying, embraces in shadow.
What shadow? A demon's?
The master of the dark.
I knew who shackled the bear. Be'lakor.
Ah, it's always Be'lakor.
Only a fool would challenge Be'lakor. And yet, the power of a dying god, there is no greater prize. A mere drop of Ursun's blood would break my curse, ending my servitude to this accursed book. Free to profit from its secrets. But Ursun is locked in the Forge of Souls, deep in the realm of chaos, and I cannot enter this nightmarish domain. All routes have been sealed by the maelstrom. There must be a way. The tome unveils a spell to summon a portal. One to bypass the maelstrom and create a door into chaos. Knowledge to bargain, for I need an ally. One who is tempted by the power of the god bear and can withstand the horrors within.
So, that's the end of our first cinematic.
Cinematic number 1.
Which is so there's a lot to unpack there. That's actually super duper interesting from like various lore perspectives. I think the first that's really, really interesting is for those unaware who haven't played Warhammer 1 and haven't seen some of our prior streams, especially the one we did on the Advisor. The book is not just a magical book. There's something in the book.
Yeah.
Which is a big, nasty, horrifying demon that you'll know if you've played Warhammer 1, named Sarthoriel the Everwatcher, who is a big player in the great game, who's up to all of his own stuff. Yeah, the good old White Crow everybody loves. And so that's how all of this really critical information is getting brought to the Advisor. But of course, as we know through the intro cinematic that you just kind of watched there, and if you've watched me and Andy talk about it, the book has a really, like most magic items, it has a cost. It has like a measure of protection from people abusing it, which is that it has to be used in the service of others. But it's kind of crazy how the cinematic shows how much that can be stretched, and that the book was literally giving him the power to speak to the dead, which is pretty interesting.
Well, it's also worth noting that there's an interesting bridge here between really old lore and what we currently have for Warhammer. Way back many centuries ago, well, maybe not quite that long ago, nearing the beginning of Chaos and it first being detailed, Tzeentch was often associated with undead stuff. Many of the old champions of Tzeentch had like big skull heads. One of the greater demons of Tzeentch had a big skull head. Many of the sorcerers of Tzeentch had big skulls or bones, or that all of them were covered in bones. So the idea that a greater demon of Tzeentch could somehow interact with the dead is not only not controversial in terms of it's just magic, and all magic is held within Tzeentch, and that includes the very depths of necromancy as well. But not just that, it also ties back to older lore where Tzeentch and undeath, in the same way that technology and Khorne used to be pretty well closely linked. And it's really nice to see that manifest, whether it was by accident or by design, doesn't really matter. It's just nice to see it in action.
Yeah, and I also love the place where the cinematic takes place, being the Howling Fortress, which is such a fascinating location of this great fortress up in the right at the tippy top of the Chaos Wastes. That is the way it's apparently been designed or grown from like the powers of chaos and yada yada, is that the wind channeling through it causes it to like eternally howl. It has this like bassy sound that's constantly reverberating from it. And of course it had a big old portal to the realm of chaos inside of it until it got exploded.
Exploded.
Yeah. Another thing that this cinematic did that I actually really like is the concept of how Ursun gets wounded. Because I think one of the big things that a lot of people kind of like raised an eyebrow initially with this game is the whole concept is Ursun, who is a god, gets captured by Be'lakor and is mortally wounded. And a lot of people, I think, were like, how the hell do you hurt a god? Like, how could a mortal possibly hurt a god? And the idea they end up running with, that this, to get the full story, you have to play through the prologue, but essentially
looking forward to it.
Oh yeah. Essentially what it tells you here is that a loyal worshiper of Ursun made his way to Ursun, but for some reason at the end turns to darker powers, and he renounces Ursun and uses the bullet that was meant to save the bear god to instead pierce his heart. Being that the bullet itself is quite literally, I think how do they describe it?
Single shot.
A single shot bound in faith forsaken, which I actually really like as a concept of that, the renouncement of a god being used as a weapon against them. To me, it's a
quite
really
literal.
fascinating idea.
It's almost the metaphor made manifest. Do rather love it.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, it kind of makes me think a lot about like Archaon's relationship with Sigmar, although Archaon obviously didn't get to throw something at Sigmar.
I think you'd have certainly given it a good go if you had the opportunity.
Oh yeah. But and then the idea that a god being wounded, especially a big one like Ursun, quite literally causing a magic. I love the idea of that. If a big god it gets hurt, it can cause a worldwide magical phenomena.
If you just compare that, if you compare that to, for example, how the Everqueen is described inside the High Elf Army lists, where when the Everqueen nears death or reaches the point where she's about to die, the world knows about it. And there is no corner of the world that won't be aware of the storms that suddenly rise, the trees that begin to die. It's a time when the Dark Elves start cackling with glee because they know the Everqueen's about to cark it. They're like, yes, it's about to occur. Where elsewhere, it's a time of great woe. Even the wood elves, who are completely separated from Ulthuan, look on as the forests themselves begin to respond to the incoming death of an Everqueen. And she is merely an avatar of a god. She's not an actual god herself. So that extra step is no great step in terms of Warhammer lore. It's already an established part of it. So to see it be used in this fashion by Warhammer Total War side, it's not really a big surprise. It does come for those who come from, say, just the novels or who come from the role-playing game. It often comes across as almost ridiculously fantastical, massively over the top, because they're so used to basically grubbing it around in the streets or killing a goblin or some equivalent, which is really low-key stuff.
One dung collector.
Exactly. It's really low-key stuff in comparison to what the whole Warhammer world offers as a whole. But Total War isn't really speaking to that part of the game. It's speaking to the big stuff, the overall world affecting bigger picture. And yeah, quite literally, the bigger the better. In this case, it's pretty much as big as you can get, as a god is nearing death.
Yeah, and the other thing I really love about it is then running with the idea of, like, if you had something that disruptive, what would it do to, of course, a realm made of magic, which is that the realm of chaos basically gets kind of thrown into turmoil. And this causes a storm of magic that is so big that in Warhammer 3, they call it the maelstrom, not to be confused with the other maelstrom, which is the one down in the ocean with the Galleon's graveyard.
Which you should go watch our stream about that, by the way, if you haven't done so already. Lorebeards Streamtastic.
Yeah, and but this storm, for the sake of the cinematics we're about to be getting into in a moment, basically what the Maelstrom in Warhammer 3 refers to is that because there's this raging storm of magic, nobody can cross into the realm of chaos proper. Instead of just being able to walk to it or go through like the usual methods of like certain teleportation spells or finding portals, everything has been cut off, because it's like, instead of walking across a river that you normally walk over a little bridge, the river is flooding, and it's just like, if you try and walk into it, you're going to get ripped to pieces. Yep. Which leads to some really fun circumstances for various characters. For instance, the 4 legendary lord demonic characters that you can play in Warhammer 3, the one big major power for each god, all of them just so happen to not be in the realm of chaos when the Maelstrom begins, just through fate, if you want to look at it that way, or sheer chance would be the other way to put it, which of course leads to the great game playing out yet again. But yeah, so this is our starting place, and I love that already here at the very beginning, you can see that his intentions are not noble at all. Like, the advisor, they could have portrayed him in this cutscene as like, oh, the world's in danger. If Ursun dies, that could lead to the fall of Kislev, which could lead to the fall of the Empire, which could lead to the apocalypse. He does not care.
No, he doesn't. He's like, it's like, hey, look, a god dying. We could use that. The power of a dying god. We could use it.
Yeah, and of course, his obsession with getting that one drop of god blood so that he can break the curse binding him to the book, because that's the other thing, is by trying to utilize the book back in the original Warhammer 1 cinematic, which we watched on our first reaction stream, which you can see on Andy's channel from like 2 weeks ago, or no, it was a little bit more than that.
About 3 weeks ago, I think it was.
Yeah. But with all that, when he tried to use the book, he became bound to it. So he was forced to carry it around, and he was forced to use it, but obviously he can't use it for himself. He has to use it in the service of others. So he's playing a really interesting game, which we're going to kind of see as we go into the upcoming cinematics, of he's playing this kind of dangerous game of trying to incentivize others to do what he wants them to do so that he can benefit from it, but he's technically advising them. Which from a political perspective is a really thin, difficult line to watch, because a lot of these characters are very clever in their own right, and he has to convince them that this is a good idea and that he's totally not manipulating them, or he 100%. Is manipulating them, but it's worth it. Because some of the characters just immediately know what he's about. But All right, so real quick, let's get caught up on super chats and stuff, and then we will dive into the next one. So hey, little law jump scare. Hope all is good, and I will be home at the weekend after I'm done with uni.
Glad to see it. That's my daughter. She's coming home at the weekend. Oh yeah,
How exciting!
be delighted to see you here, Joe.
Sean Schultz, why was the baguette in the zoo? Because it was bred in captivity.
Boom, boom.
Wasn't
I just did a quick story about the dragon under the zoo. So I'm calling that one perfectly placed.
Jonathan Scott, why doesn't the larger Lorebeard simply eat the smaller one? There's an ocean in the way. That's the primary issue.
Also, who's the larger of the pair of us, really?
Yeah, that'll be a mystery you'll never know the answer to.
Yeah, you know, these screens can lie, man. I'm telling you.
It was Be'lakor all along. It was always
Be'lakor all along. It totally was.
It's always Be'lakor.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to these because for any of you who out there who've watched the LAWhammer actual play, I've used Dodgy Johan as we refer to him in that game. That wasn't me, by the way, who named him that. The advisor multiple times. And the very nature of the book and the curse that's laid upon it, where he can't use it properly unless he is advising someone else, became a core component of the opening of one of the special episodes that we had over the festive period, where he figured out basically that at any point he was being watched by others because of the very nature of the way that the Warhammer world works, which meant that he could advise nothing more than his secret watchers, who just happened to be those who are watching the show.
Yeah, there's a LAWhammer. On top of being an amazing show, there are elements that will surprise you if you have the pleasure of watching it, which if you haven't, you should totally go start. Including some of my favorite elements, which is that it breaks the fourth wall numerous times. And if you're a patron and go read the special Patreon blogs about, you can learn some really interesting stuff about that.
It's not as simple as it appears.
Yeah, like it almost goes from being like fourth wall breaking to like fifth wall breaking.
Do you enjoy our games? Right, anyway, let's get ourselves to cinematic number 2, Legendary Lore time.
First is probably either the funniest one or the second funniest one. So let's get into the advisor meets Tsarina Katarin.
That's gonna go down well. Kislev.
A nation in mourning. False news has arrived before me. They believe Ursun is already dead. My proposition will require a delicate touch. I speak the truth. Your god is not dead. He lies in the realm of chaos, a captive of the Shadow Lord. It is no lie. For one drop of Ursun's blood, I can help you save him.
Choose your last words wisely, old man.
He's having a bad time.
Your bloodline. You and the bear are one. See past your grief. Search your heart. Ursun is alive.
He speaks the truth.
The truth.
He speaks the truth. Silence!
The one dude was brave.
We have lost what is most precious. Many say I am at fault, that I no longer have the right to sit on this throne. So I stand. I stand with my people, all of you. And if it comes to it, I shall die with my people. We have been blinded by grief. Ursun lives, and while he fights to draw breath, we fight for him! For Ursun! For Kislev! For Ursun! For Kislev!
Ursun! Kislev!
For Ursun! For Kislev! Ursun! For Kislev!
Kislev marches north. Into hell.
Into hell. Oh,
Into hell. So,
because of course, hell is a concept that Kislev uses. I love it.
Yeah, maybe she had some educational years down south. But
Yeah, that'll be it.
yeah. So here we see the thing that I love to really speculate about is how many words do you think the advisor managed to get out before she just immediately started turning him into a popsicle?
Yeah, sucks for him, doesn't it? I particularly like this one. I actually prefer this to seeing the Zarina in game because I prefer the art to the model.
Yeah, well, yeah, you always have like the artists who are like, oh yeah, I can make them like all look like they're interesting and different and like different ethnicities and stuff. And then you have the modelers that go, we do not have enough time to make individual different models for all these humans.
I'm straight.
we're gonna use what we already have because we gotta save money. Let's go. But
whip, get it released.
These cinematics are beautiful. Like as much as I enjoyed the in-game cinematics from Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 3 moving to this kind of artistic style where there's like little After Effect animations with the art is like, it's so much better. Like it's so pretty.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if I could do it myself, actually, because just looking at the nature of how it's built, because I've got After Effects here, I've never really dived into it. But
I bet you could.
I mean, much of it doesn't
I know
look
a guy
hard.
if you ever want to talk to someone who does it.
Yeah, totally. I might be interested because I was just looking at it going, now that's just a basic effect on the eyes, and that's just a quick reflection of light, and that can't be that hard, surely. And it's so effective when you
so
watch
pretty,
it.
yeah.
It grounds you into it so well, and with just a little bit of voice acting, suddenly it all comes to life. And I mean, I can pull together a quick image myself without too much difficulty. Slap on some After Effects. I could maybe do that.
Yeah, so I love that this does a really good job of keeping to the portrayal that we see of a lot of Katarin in like various books of that her ice court is quite literally supposed to be frigid. She sits on a throne of ice and she, for political reasons, she deliberately makes people uncomfortable that are talking to her, making them cold, making them like if you ever watch like Hot Ones, the interviews with the spicy wings, like it's hard for people to maintain their facades or the little stories they build up when they're genuinely and deeply uncomfortable. It's more likely to get people to reveal like their true intentions and stuff like that. And the whole thing is that she's not killing the advisor or thinking about killing the advisor simply because she's angry. She's doing it to try and figure out if he's being honest. Like she's trying to suss out his intentions. And ends up coming to the decision that, okay, yeah, he is telling the truth. Like he is being honest because he says the right thing at the right time.
I think you mean the truth.
The truth, yeah.
The truth. Yeah.
But yeah, A, beautiful cinematic. B, the scene change to him being like, this will require a delicate touch, and then he's just half frozen, being like, oh, it's just marvelous. The other thing that's really fun about this campaign start that you don't get as much. I wish the campaigns were able to delve more into an overall story than they have time for. Because one of the things that this kind of sets up, and if you've ever talked to the devs, they talk about being a major setup of this campaign, is the idea that Katarin is actually losing her grip on the throne. That because she's very young and she took over after her father died and she's an ice witch, normally that wouldn't be an issue. But because her father established the Great Orthodoxy, they are directly threatening her power base. Not to the extent that like Kostaltyn would not genuinely ever consider killing her, but he would deeply consider basically making her into a figurehead, and removing her power and saying, no, the Orthodoxy should lead because look, we've got this young witch on the throne who's out there cavorting around with uncle princes and fornicating outside marriage. It's one of my funniest things about that short story is Kostaltyn just yelling fornicators when he gets angry. But,
I mean, how dare people, just do what people do.
But it all leads to when Ursin gets deeply wounded. I mean, think about the effect that would have in Kislev. Like all the priests who would just immediately probably sense that through vision. Like, I can't imagine they'd probably wake up with nightmares or have horrible visions or you know, it's hard to imagine what would happen to you as a blessed person of a god when that god gets absolutely like bodied. It's probably deeply unpleasant.
Yeah, it's not going to be good, is it?
And it's very
Yeah.
easy for the Orthodoxy and other political forces within Kislev to point at Katarin and go, this is her fault. Like, because she's weak, because she's corrupt, or because she's a witch, or because she's a woman, or because she's whatever, you know, whatever angle they decide to paint it as, she's a convenient scapegoat for a really scary, genuinely terrifying situation for Kislev.
And she's definitely not her father, whom she replaced. Her father, Zaradi Boka, was pretty much the epitome of Ursun. He dragged Ursun kicking and screaming back into the consciousness of all Kislevites, where beforehand Ursun worship was significantly weaker. After Zaradi Boka, the good old bear riding Tsar himself, significantly more Ursun worship everywhere. He was pretty much Ursun made manifest to many. And to have him replaced with what is, by comparison, a completely different figure with a completely different angle, and then suddenly, oh yeah, and the bear god's dead. Yeah, who are they going to blame other than the Ghostbusters?
Yeah,
Clearly her.
The other thing that's important to note is that a lot of people don't know this because, once again, it's not really well communicated within the game itself. But by the time this cinematic takes place, Ursun has been captured already for like a couple of years. I think it's like 4 or 5 years. So for the last 4 or 5 years during Katarin's, like pretty much right after Katarin takes over, Ursun gets captured. One of the winters immediately following after Boris Ursus's death. And Be'lakor captures him while he's in hibernation because he's a bear god, so he hibernates. And Be'lakor manages to use his various agents to capture Be'lakor, drag him to the forge, the Forge of Souls, where he binds him in shadow. And because Ursun isn't around, one of the ideas that the devs ran with that I actually really, really liked is the way Kislev's winter into spring works is that it's not a natural winter, it's a magical winter. And the season cannot change unless all 4 members of the Kislevite Pantheon are around, because they each have an important job. Ursun's being that he roars, which chases winter. It basically scatters winter. It breaks the winter storm. And then it's like, you know, Dawes brings the sun, and Solyak does her thing, and Tor does his thing. So Boris Ursus dies, you know, his body, he dies at the Battle of the River Linsk, I think. And his body gets swept away by the river and yada yada. And Katarin takes over, and then suddenly there's no more spring. Like, spring's just gone for like 4 to 5 years. So Kislev has been going through famine. They've been going through a winter that never ends. And then suddenly, you know, just as things seem like they couldn't possibly get any worse, all of the prophets and everyone become utterly convinced that Ursun has now just died. So, like, this is, from a Kislevite perspective, it's like the goddamn apocalypse. Which, once again, I wish the game was able to communicate a bit better. If you play through the whole, the prologue communicates most of this information, but a lot of people haven't played it, which is a shame.
I'm quite actually amused by this, because if it goes by the standard dating, that actually dates the game to a specific date in the timeline, because Radiboka dies at a particular point in the standard Warhammer Fantasy battle. That would make this, if it went by the same date, 2517.
Yeah, which is very, very interesting. So,
yeah.
If there's anything else you wanted to add before we move on to the next one?
No, I'm quite happy. Right, let's see what's next.
All right, next we have...
digging these. So I do have one question, actually, before we go. So I'm obviously going to get to see this myself relatively soon, but I presume that's our opening cinematic. Do we get any more, or do they just let you play the game, and the voice says, yes, well done, goodbye?
So what happens next is that, when you're loading into the screen that's going to take you to that cinematic, it has like a little text
I am
log.
aware of another cinematic.
Yeah, so A, there's a little more, and B, when you actually load into the campaign map on the Realm of Chaos map specifically, because that's the story campaign, you'll have like the legendary lord and the advisor standing next to each other, and they share like a very brief back and forth.
Hello, how are you? Very fine. Good,
Which
goodbye.
usually boils down to the legendary lord being like, all right, advise me, advisor, or else I'm going to kill you right now. And the advisor being like, okay, let's get to work.
I want to bring this one up because I find that fascinating, because it's another example of how Total War, assuming that that's correct, completely plays with the timeline, just tears it up as and where required for what's best for their game.
Yeah. So yeah, because the whole idea of that Warhammer 1 starts with the coronation of Karl Franz, which is 2501, 2502. But Katarin is like a baby during that. Yeah, and granted, Total War, of course, looks at the timeline and is like, it's more like guidelines.
Yeah, totally.
We don't actually pay attention to that.
So when I was figuring out what I was doing with LAWhammer, I had a similar issue because I totally intended to use the advisor, but when you look at it, the advisor's kicking around at points with capabilities at points that don't match the stories that I was definitely using. Like, for example, Tsar Radiboka. He is currently in power in Kislev. And that means that, because I'm playing in 2512 as my starting point, and the Emperor has been kicking around for quite some time, from 2502 onwards. So how do I use the advisor? Has he done certain things? Has he not done certain things? So I had to effectively make my own version of him for the campaign, one that had done some things, but not other things, and also done his own thing.
All right, so next up we have, and we'll get back to super chats after we finish all the Kislevite characters.
Yeah,
so next up,
that's cool.
We've got a brand new character to the Total War verse. We have Kostaltyn, and this, I will say, I wasn't convinced on him as a character until this cinematic.
I'm seeing this one, so I'm quite keen.
Yeah, this one made me fall in love with him because most of the time when you see him in game, he's this like raving lunatic. Who's just he's quite literally shouting at the top of his lungs, and he just sounds like he's insane. And this cinematic goes to show you that that's not the real Kostaltyn. Well, it kind of is. Like, he is actually that zealotrous, but he is putting on a bit of an act. This is the real Kostaltyn.
The disciple of the bear.
At the icy grave of Kislev's most glorious leader, I found the one I seek. Kostaltyn of Kislev. There is no price he would not pay to save Ursun. And with the death of Tsar Boris Ursus, he alone has belief enough to perform this miracle.
It is a mercy that you cannot witness Kislev's desolation. Your son has been taken from us. I see it in visions. He bleeds, trapped and alone. Yet instead of worship, the Tsarina dallies with frost magic and courtly intrigue. Forgive me, my Tsar, but your daughter fails you. Doom comes for Kislev. The shade who follows me shows himself.
I know where Ursun dies, and I can take you to him.
Lies will not save you, disciple of the dark gods.
Listen to me. My book reveals a path to his deathbed. I will show you the way for one drop, just one, of Ursun's divine blood.
Heresy, sin unbound.
You
It
vampire!
will free me of a chaos-sent curse. It will make me pure. And your faith will save your god.
Bring your book. The motherland endures, whatever the cost.
All right. So Kostaltyn, a couple really interesting things about the cinematic that you may not pick up on if you didn't follow like the dev blocks and everything. First of all, he knows where Boris Ursus's body is. Obviously, he's here talking to it. One of the cool things that Total War did is that in the original storyline, Boris in the actual like Total War Warhammer Fantasy storyline, Boris just dies. Like, he dies at the River Lensk and he's dead, super dead. And it's implied that, you know, his body is immediately recovered. In this story, for Total War, because they wanted to bring Urson back, they instead ran with the story that when Burson dies and he falls from the back of his loyal bear Erskine, the River Lensk, the motherland, causes the River Lensk to swell, and the water, the icy waters cover Boris Ursus and lift him up and drag him downstream, and he vanishes and nobody knows where he went. He's lost to them. And what happens is that the Great Orthodoxy, likely because of visions or prayers or whatever, find Boris Ursus's body, which has been deposited somewhere along the River Lensk and is frozen solid. So it's completely solidified within pure ice, like pure, true ice of the motherland itself. And he's essentially in a healing coma, but nobody knows that. And Kostaltyn, as the leader of the Great Orthodoxy, deliberately does not tell anyone where Boris Ursus is. He keeps it a secret. And only like the highest ranking members of the Great Orthodoxy know where it is, because he knows if he told Katarin, she would want to do something about reclaiming her father's body. So he deliberately keeps it to himself, keeps it as a big secret. Another thing that's really, really interesting about this cinematic is that, you know, you get the whole thing of Kostaltyn. I love his design in this. He does not look anything like this in game.
He doesn't. That's a shame, because his design here is pretty awesome.
Like, he looks similar to this, but he looks a lot more like he's not slept in like 1,000 years and is just ragged. Whereas this, he has a lot
more Rasputin than this one, for example.
Yes, he has much more dignity to his appearance in this, while still looking a little bit he looks more realistic, I think, in the artwork. But the thing about him is how, like, he's very contemplative, and you can hear his disgust for Katarin, in that he genuinely feels that she's just doing the wrong things. And it's also because he just doesn't understand what she is. He doesn't understand magic, and you can tell. He literally just sees magic as sin. But the thing that is super cool about Kostaltyn is, among the non-chaos characters throughout the entire trilogy that interact with the advisor, he is one of 2 characters who knows that he's a servant of chaos immediately. Like, because he has the whole line of, like, he literally calls him you can tell that he can sense the advisor. Like, he knows the advisor's been stalking him for days.
Stalking him. Yeah.
And he's just been waiting for him to reveal himself. He's not afraid. He's like, he'll show himself when he does. And he just literally immediately calls him a disciple of the dark gods and is like, yeah, I'm going to kill you right now. Until the advisor, to this credit, I love the way the advisor placates him by saying that, I've been cursed, and Urson will purify me. Urson will save me if you let me help you save him. Like, because if he had said, and we kind of talked about this back in the advisor episode, where the book kind of coaches him on what to say. Because if he had said pretty much anything different, Kostaltyn would have absolutely brained him right here.
I think it's fair to say that pretty much all of the various folks that he helps to advise are going to brain him. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, but I'm curious of Andy's thoughts on this little thing. I love this thing where he's like, heresy, sin unbound. Like, man, he says heresy in such a nice way. I love his voice actor when he talks quieter. Like, the shouting is fun, but he has such like a unique kind of like Eastern inflection on his accent. Like, it's not just kind of the typical, like, it's a Kislevite Russian accent. No, it sounds different to what you would probably expect, I think, from a lot of people.
Yeah, I like it. I'm not entirely sure what else to say other than when I listened, I was like, yes, love this. When I looked, I was like, yes, love this. Obviously, as somebody who's written a significant amount of material about Kislev for Games Workshop at various points in my career, I pretty much rewrote Kislev for them into its current version. It's always fascinating to see how other people take that and take it to new places. The Great Orthodoxy didn't exist when I was, for example, writing it. And to see that next development, for me, still is super fascinating to see the cult of Ursun taken far beyond what it originally was, to the point that when we were writing about it, the cult of Ursun had been effectively eradicated, wiped out from Kislev in its entirety, and Tsar Radiboka had brought it back again. Good old Boris had done his thing, and sitting there upon the good old throne of Kislev had brought it all back and set things up for his daughter when she eventually rises to the throne as a relatively young leader to take control of Kislev. And seeing this, I think, is just brilliant.
Yeah, I especially love the idea that it's interesting how much you can kind of garner about him and like how schemy he is, in that, like, I think in a lot of ways, like, oh, we found, like, you know, a former ruler / sacred figure to our cult. A lot of various leaders of different cults would have seen that and been like, oh, $signs, we could turn this into a shrine. Like, we could turn this into like a temple or something. You know, we could build like a sacred thing around it. But Kostaltyn doesn't. He keeps it a secret, which is a really interesting decision that says a lot about it.
I would say that pretty much marks him out in an odd way as a bad guy.
Oh,
because he is jealously keeping that to himself. He, for whatever reasons he may spin, for whatever reasons he may claim, oh, I couldn't possibly allow his grieving daughter to know that the body's here because she would ruin things and stuff. Whatever reasons he might come up with, ultimately, he's keeping him to himself. And that, by its very nature, is interesting. Now, you could claim, well, he was divinely inspired. No, actually, Ursun's gone. Yeah, so you could even claim he's not divinely inspired. He is entirely doing it for his own personal reasons and gain.
Well, I would say that's absolutely the case. It's interesting having a character who clearly sees the Ice Court as evil. Like, Kostaltyn is not at all subtle about that. He genuinely believes that all magic, like, he understands the concept. And me and Andy have kind of talked about this, not necessarily on stream, but just like in personal chats, of like, technically, you know, magic is chaos. Like, you're essentially using fire to fight fire when you're using like wizards against chaos and stuff like that.
Unless you're nice witch.
Yeah.
You could argue it's different.
But it's like, so Kostaltyn having this hilariously enough incorrect understanding where he sees all magic as evil, when one could argue that the ice magic would actually be the exception, but he doesn't understand the difference. So to him, all magic should be persecuted because it's simply chaos. Which
to me, it speaks to, if you're wanting to look into it more deeply, it really does speak to somebody who has had upbringings from more of the Ungol side rather than the Gospodar side.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of his basic thought there would make a lot of sense if it had come from an Ungol background. And then Ursun being very much the god of the Gospodars, he sounds like a classic convert. Someone who was somewhere else and moves into it.
I mean, and that would make so much sense for him as a character because he persecutes the Ungols like nobody's business.
Would do it perfectly. A classic convert.
Because uniquely, he is the only Kislevite faction in the game who starts his campaign at war with other Kislevites, which normally the game is like, you should never do this. But Kostaltyn starts at war with a unique faction called the Ungol Kindred. And his starting quest is to quite literally subjugate or exterminate them.
Kick living crap out of the Ungols. Yay! Let's do more persecution of the persecuted people. Yay!
Yeah, whereas with Katarin, like when you play a Katarin campaign, your starting enemy is an invading Norscan force, and you have to push them out of the Oblast, which is like, much more noble and yada yada. And you're supposed to use like diplomacy and the mechanics to win over the hearts of the Kislevite people. Whereas Kostaltyn uses like
the blade and fire,
zealous faith combined with fear.
I quite like the idea. Then there is a part of me that thinks that he is maybe like maybe both Gospodar and Ungol. That would do it, and hates one part of himself for being not pure, as he likes to put it.
He's like half-breed.
Yeah, that if anything, that I just feel his anger even more. I think there's a lot there that could potentially be plumbed in for a whole host of potential issues for that poor character.
Some other little fun notes about him for anyone that hasn't like read devlogs about Kostaltyn of that. So for those that are like, how did the Great Orthodoxy come about? Like, is it like a huge retcon? It's actually, it's a retcon that makes a lot of sense, but it's not even really a retcon. It's just an addition because basically the idea is when Boris Ursus takes over as Tsar, and he goes through his whole thing to bring back the Cult of Ursun, because like Andy said, the Cult of Ursun basically died out. I think Tsar Boris was like the first priest of Ursun in like a century or something like that.
I mean, ever since the Great War against Chaos, when basically Sigmar came along through the very real Magnus the Pious to save their ass, Ursun had been pretty much pushed aside, and there had been almost zero activity on the whole Cult of Ursun side for about 100 years, even though the palace was redolent with bears. There was bear iconography everywhere, but the actual worship of Ursun had pretty much diminished to almost nothing.
Yeah, and so what Boris did is Boris believed that when he took over that one of the big flaws that led to Kislev's fall during the Great War and having to be saved by the Empire was that they didn't have proper protections against Chaos Cultists, and Chaos Cultists sneaking their way in through the various cults of Salyak, Tor, Ursun, and Daz. And so
if you go to the fantasy roleplay role, it had been replaced by Ulrich and Tal and various empire deities.
Oh yeah, those are big issues. Yeah,
they had so infiltrated into Kislev, and the traditional deities of Kislev have been pretty much pushed to the side, to the point that even Mor had a large garden of Mor in Kislev itself, where before that it was very much is no matter. They did not care at all for the god of death in the slightest. They had a completely different set of traditions for what happened when you die, but so diminished had the Kislevite gods become that they had been, in the case of Ursun, pretty much wiped out entirely.
Yeah. So what Boris decided is that because the cults had for so long been kind of like an individual like culture thing, like every stanitsa or every little village, every little group, kindred had their own like interpretations on how best to worship the gods and all this stuff. He viewed that as, because it was so scattered and messy, it made them too vulnerable. So he basically called everybody together. He sent out a bunch of messengers to all the different like villages and major settlements and the Ungol horse tribes that were running around, and said, send me all of your priests, send me all of your blessed folk. We're going to have a big meeting. And he called them all together and he said, all right, I, as Tsar, am forming the Great Orthodoxy, which is going to be formed of your 4 cults. And you're all going to sit down together and you're going to basically codify your cults. You're going to figure out what your strictures are. You're going to figure out what your rules are, what your prayers are. And we're going to get rid of all the extraneous crap because we are too vulnerable. And this led to a huge schism within some of the cults, because some of the cults viewed this as basically like putting like chokers around their necks, putting them on leashes. And a lot of the cults also viewed this, saw the potential for power grabs and for greed and for other things like that to show up, which led to a lot of clashing. But Boris finally got it settled and everybody was okay with it. And Kostaltyn was a fanatical fan of Boris. Like, he loved Boris Ursus so much. He idolized him. And when Boris died, Kostaltyn's zealotry like went fever pitch, and it's very likely, in my opinion, that Kostaltyn was probably at the Battle of the River Linsk and he probably saw Boris fall. And it leads to this really fascinating situation where Kostaltyn does something. He uses his unique ability to manipulate people, because when he's out in public, he appears as like this crazy, dirty guy who's just one of the common people. He's just one of the common folk. He doesn't appear as like an
quite unlike this version.
Yeah, he appears far more like, this is probably what he looks like on his personal time when he like wants to, when he's doing like private business. But when he's like out on the battlefield,
I hope that's no euphemism.
Yeah, no, not that kind.
Private business.
Please, the way Kostaltyn acts, I feel like he's one of those guys that's like, masturbation, that's a sin. Who would ever dare even like feel like I feel like Kostaltyn's got skeletons in his closet. But
he's saying he's got a big boner. Anyway, moving on.
And he'll be kind of, I think we're doing a stream on his own someday. I think him doing him and Boris, but let's keep moving. I don't want to waste too much more time on it, but he's a great character, fascinating character. So the last one before we get back to doing super chats and stuff is the Defender of the Bear, which starts...
The Defender of the Bear?
So this starts the exact same way, but something different happens.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more, oh
The
cinematic.
grave of Kislev's most glorious leader. If Tsar Boris Boka did not slumber in ice, he could have safeguarded Ursul.
How low the motherland has fallen without you, my Tsar. How God is taken from us. I see it in visions. His death draws near. And yet your fool daughter dallies in games of politics. If only you were here, you could save Orson. That it cannot be. I will keep the faith as Kislev dies. Farewell, my Tsar.
Poor Kostaltyn. His zealotry blinds him to hope, deafens him to the cry from the cold void. But I hear you, Boris Boka. Your spirit stirs in Kislev's hour of need. Let me guide you to Ursun for one drop of his divine blood. A fair price to save the motherland.
Guess who's back? Back again!
Look at him.
You shall have your godblood.
Boris
Ursun
is back!
shall be saved.
I love how pissed he looks.
Oh,
Like,
hilarious.
what a man. He looks like, what a man. Look how
So
thick
was
that
that-
boy is.
Was that a special character pre-order release, or was that just something
No,
that came along
he's-
with the base?
So he was hidden in the base game. He's an unlockable character.
Nice.
You have to play as I think you have to play as Katarin. And some point along your campaign, the advisor will be like, "Oh, holy shit, we found Boris Ursus." And you find out that a bunch of Tzeentch demons are basically attacking or doing a big ritual to melt away the true ice and basically claim his corpse for their own to do things with.
Oh, those pesky Tzeentch demons.
So you go there and you kick the crap out of him, and Katarin, having discovered where her father is, uses her magic to basically bust open his prison, and he returns. And once you do that, you get the option to like recruit him or whatever, and get your dad back. And then then once you finish that, you unlock him to play as his own standalone campaign.
That's a fun little aside, isn't it?
But oh, you can do it as Kostaltyn as well. Okay, yeah, and you just need to control one of the major cities for 10 turns. Yeah. So what I like a lot about like Boris's design in the artwork is just beautiful. Like he looks amazing. His voice is super fun. Like he just sounds so angry. But the thing that I find particularly cool about this shows how important the advisor is. Like, because he doesn't get involved, you could see how that whole situation played out totally different. Where Kostaltyn does not have his moment of like reigniting the fire of, oh, I could do something. Like he just says, I will hold the faith as Kislev dies.
Yep.
Like there's no like, oh, we're gonna survive this. It's a very, shall I say, Kislevite way of looking of it of,
Is no matter, we die
we're
now.
gonna die, but we're gonna fight.
We will die now. Good night.
Yeah. So very, very fun cinematic. I was so happy when they revealed Boris. I was so happy when they revealed that he was going to be in the game, because a lot of people were like, "Oh, but he's already dead by this point in the timeline." And it's like,
Oh heck, half the
like-
characters in
yeah, it's like,
Total
dude,
War are
I
dead.
could play Rapunzel de Lyonesse. Like,
Exactly.
go away.
There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to play Boris as well.
Yeah. All right. So, getting
Interesting that they go with blue and white and red and Boris, which is pretty much exactly the colors for Boris Todbringer.
Yeah.
Interesting that they accidentally pretty much bedecked him in Boris Todbringer garb. I wonder if they had any awareness of that, because if they come around to do Boris Todbringer, they'll have to basically design him differently.
Well, yeah. Interestingly, you may not know this because he doesn't have his own campaign, but Boris has a completely unique model in game.
Ah, good.
Because
I rather love good old Boris Todbringer.
When they released the Beastman campaign for Warhammer 1,
yeah,
Boris was a free bonus you got because he's your
I might even have that somewhere. I seem to recall that.
Yeah, because
I don't think I ever played that part though.
There's a unique Warhammer 1 campaign, which I really hope they port to Warhammer 3 eventually, because it's a unique map where it's like super zoomed in.
The Drakvald one. Yeah.
The Drakvald and everything. And it's about Kazrak taking Boris's eye.
Fully aware of that campaign because I went through that one with some glee way back when, because I was looking to see what locations they dropped in it, because obviously I was mapping at the time, and I was looking to see if there was anything that I could take from their maps. As it turned out, there wasn't. And indeed, they'd even used some fan locations in there. I wonder if they realized they'd done that.
The Laughing God. I've said what feels like 1,000 times in Super Chats, but I really wish CA did more campaign cinematics. Also, Katarin's was so hyped for me, I was left wanting more. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That particularly Katarin, out of these ones here so far, Katarin's one was just, I want more. I want more. I mean, I've drawn Katarin for Games Workshop once, and I was given leeway to draw her quite differently. I made her much more Eastern in appearance. So pretty much anytime Katarin comes up, I'm immediately, I wonder how they did it.
Yep. If Kislev's winter is magical, could other gods theoretically fix it?
No.
I mean, it would be very complicated.
Yeah, it would have to no longer be Kislev as it's currently understood.
That's very true.
So yes would be the answer, but it would have to break Kislev. It would have to make Kislev something different.
Yeah,
the very nature of the Oblast and its frozen plane and Mother Kislev and the Ancient Widow and all of those things, no matter how it's rewritten, there's a big redolent mixture of Kislev is different.
Yeah. Dirthu Manservant. Katarin being the canonical winner makes her so much more badass, which means she defeated all the legendary lords and 4 demon princes. What a woman. Yeah, for those unaware, Katarin is 100% the canonical winner of the whole crisis with Boris, or with Ursun. Because she gets a unique cinematic, whereas all the other gods pretty much, characters have very, very similar cinematics for winning their campaigns. Hers is very unique, and also if you play the Champions of Chaos DLC, when you start it, it starts immediately after the Ursun crisis, and it says that Katarin won, which is super cool, because that means that she managed to get the Great Orthodoxy under control, and she also managed to whoop up on a bunch of demon princes, because in order to beat the campaign, you have to go into the realms of chaos and you have to defeat a major demon prince of each of the 4 powers.
As you do.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yep, it is.
Hammond, damn, I'm late. What I missed? The same playlist? No, it's a different playlist. I just grabbed a random one, but it works for what we're doing.
It does.
Inquisitor Thomas, so what you're saying is
Lover of Kislevite King? Oh, interesting.
Very interesting. It would be very fun to speculate on Kostaltyn, how Kostaltyn feels about a lot of things, especially because he comes off as a character who has a lot of repressed things going on in his life. Tamarkon has risen. He has indeed. Kostaltyn created Ursun Flakes? Probably. I'd believe it. Because the other interesting thing about him is that Kostaltyn is like the wealthiest person in Kislev. Like, he just is.
Really?
Because he controls all of the wealth through the Great Orthodoxy, and the way that he has shifted it since the time of Boris, the amount of money they make is insane. But Kostaltyn purposefully dresses in like dirty clothes when he goes out in public. And rants and raves as a zealotrous, like warrior priest type figure, to make himself seem like one of the common men. But in reality, he is quite literally the wealthiest man in Kislev.
Interesting. Like it.
because he controls all the wealth of the cults, which is a lot. Monsieur Manatee, what would be your biggest fear if you were transported into the Warhammer world right now? Mine would be knowing that death isn't a certainty anymore. Oh, geez.
I mean, your biggest fear would just be being there in the first place. The Warhammer world is awful.
Yeah,
I mean, it's one of those things that you look at it and you go, well, that's not bad. That's not bad. It's just terrible. Nowhere's safe. Diseases everywhere. They don't have modern anything. And it's just horrible. Gods are real. The gods are awful. Just no.
Yeah, I would. I'd be looking for the ticket puncher real quick. I wouldn't want to be there. Like or gaming, do you think Boris Boka is one of, or maybe the strongest human warriors? I mean, Boris Boka, is he the strongest human to ever live? Probably not. No, but was he like an absolute beast and probably like in the top 5, top 1%? Oh yeah, probably.
I mean, yeah, he's a total unit, obviously. But is he the pinnacle? I think the answer almost certainly is no. I mean, he fell in battle, for goodness sake. And he just fell in battle against Norse raiders, if I recall, in the Warhammer lore at least. And was swept downriver after that. If he was all that, he would not fall. He did. So no is sadly the answer. Nevertheless, he was getting on a bit. Look at him.
Yeah,
Poor
like
chap.
Boris comes off as very much a man who, for a normal human, he's like in the top 1%. But
Then a Grail Knight comes over and says hi.
Yeah, but he's not supernatural.
Yeah.
He is a naturally very strong warrior who is bulky, and he's been fighting his whole life. And he fought Erskine barehanded, quite literally. And managed to wrestle Erskine into like what do you call it when they're like evenly matched?
Standstill?
Yeah.
Stalemate.
Which, considering that Erskine is quite literally like the bear personification of Ursun, is like the biggest goddamn bear in the world. Very impressive. But he did fall against, granted, the Chaos Lord who killed him, like, was responsible for the ultimately killing him, was pretty nasty.
But again, they all are.
Yeah, but they're all, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You want peak human Archeon. That's a pretty damn fine example.
Yeah, or like Grail Knights, or people that are like actively blessed by gods that make them superhuman and stuff like that. Alfred, he reminds me of Theodore Roosevelt with his build. Yeah, I can see it. I can definitely see it. He's got that wide, that, he looks like a man who knows really well how to wrestle. That he has a wrestler build.
He does have one of those bodies, doesn't he?
Which makes sense for like his storyline and all that.
Yeah, agreed.
Ricky, currently in a Warhammer battle, Be'lakor is holding the line. These goddamn walking mummies won't win for chaos. Yeah, those Tomb Kings are a bitch.
Aren't they just?
Kremlo must rise. No, he mustn't.
I reckon, though, if Sotek got trapped in the Warhammer world, he might consider a conversion. If Kremlo offers him a way out,
listen,
old ones.
I would have zero shame in the Warhammer world if there's
totally.
a route to
Whatever
survival,
gets me out.
Yeah. Eagle Wing, I wish the immortal start for Boris wasn't up top. I mean, it's fine. Is it
right at the very top?
Yeah. So Boris starts in the Chaos Waste because basically the idea is he wakes up and he knows. The idea they ran with, which I think totally is understandable, is that he knows that he can't go back to Kislev, because if he does, it's going to cause a schism where people are going to be like, oh, the Tsar's back, so he should be on the throne. And he doesn't want to threaten his daughter's rule. So basically, he gathers a bunch of really, really loyal people, essentially in secret, and he marches off north to take the fight to Chaos to prevent them from invading Kislev in the first place. So, or as the way he puts it, he becomes Kislev's spear. So he's the spear thrust into the north.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
and horrible place to start, but sure.
Oh yeah, and it's meant to be a hard campaign. Like, that's the whole thing. If you're playing Boris Ursus, it's because you're looking for a challenge.
And just when this one comes out, I'm just going to bring up this one. Just say Robert the Bruce. I'm related to him. It's a small thing, but there you go.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, he's one of my uncles, all the way up the family tree.
Sean Soltz, would King Lewin Linker like Boris Boka? I think he would find there are things Lewin would like about Boris, but there are Kislevite roughness is pretty infamous, and Boris Boka in particular. There are some really hilarious loading screen quotes about Boris Boka. Like, I think Katarin says something along the lines, she's talking to like an advisor from the Empire or a delegate from the Empire who's representing Karl Franz. And she says something along the lines of like, oh yeah, I've heard about your emperor. My father said that, like, I think she says something like, my father said he's kind of a weakling and a bit of an idiot, but he has a good heart. Which is, and the thing about it is Boris said that very bluntly in front of his court. And that's the thing. He's very abrasive. And he drinks, you know, he likes his kvass. So I think there are elements about him that Lewin would respect, but he probably would find his courtly manners wanting.
These are two devout men in very different ways. One of whom quite literally went through not just the initiation, but the whole process of becoming a priest of Ursun through after he had already become Tsar, and endangered himself in a variety of ways because he believed that's what is right. He's a man of absolute certainty of purpose, who sees things through. And in some respects, you could say the same for Lewin. Lewin is much older than him, much older than him. He may not necessarily look it, but he's a freaking Grail Knight. The man's effectively
like 150 years old.
Yeah, effectively half immortal. And the pair of them don't really compare in many respects, but equally, they are both kings of old world nations, who have lots of people who respect them, who need to be respected in turn. But Boris, well, he's Boris, isn't he?
Yeah. And if you want to have fun with your own little mental headcanons and stuff, I mean, Boris sat on the throne for a good while. Like, he was on there for a good few decades. So it's
about 25 years, as I recall, I think.
Yeah, so it's certainly not impossible that the two would have met each other at some point.
Oh, I think almost certainly.
Yeah, which is fun to imagine. It's That Right Guy. Games Workshop CA did a great job with Kislev. Thanks for your work too, Andy. They've become my favorite faction. I want to find more books and lore about them.
Well, I'm not going to say go buy the book that I wrote, but it's a not bad place. In fact, if you're looking for lore about Kislev that predates Total War's version, Riders of the Dead by Dan Abnett's a pretty decent start. The story's a little bit... could have done a bit more, but there's tons of really good Kislev stuff in there. The Ambassador Chronicles by Graham McNeil, they're also definitely worth dropping into. The Von Velten, who's the primary character in there, definitely isn't Sean Connery, honest. And obviously Realm of the Ice Queen, which I helped write along with Graham McNeil and others, which is the area book about Kislev, which was created for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. But it is worth noting this is all before Total War, which then came along and went, right, so what have we got for Kislev? Let's add on the Orthodoxy and take everything that was there and add to it, which I think made it, in general, a better, more realized situation, because the gods, as they stood inside the Kislev book, had been recreated by Gav Thorpe, that is, all the way back in Warhammer 6th. I always forget if it's 5th or 6th that came out. I think it was 6th. Was it 5th? Doesn't matter. It came out in an earlier version of Warhammer, and they added some new gods just for Kislev, and then nothing happened with them at all. And when we came along to repurpose them for Realm of the Ice Queen, we were in a position where we weren't allowed to change anything that was there, nor were we allowed to develop it. But we could mess around with everything else. It was an odd place to be in. So the gods didn't really get developed much. They got a little bit of extra detail. And that left us in an odd position, which I'm really glad that Creative Assembly have come along and gone, hey, we could take this further, because we couldn't, and they could, and that was brilliant.
Yep. All right, so next up, we have a bit of an interesting character. We have the God Slayer, who technically has not earned his title yet. So
just the Slayer then.
Yeah, this is a demon prince who believes he's killed Ursun, but he's about to find out that is not true.
He does not do it.
So this is and it's worth noting as you're watching this is a baby demon prince. He's only been a demon prince for a little tiny while.
You did a baby. I did a baby.
A new evil enters the world. A prince of Kislev, Reborn, a prince of darkness, a champion of the Chaos Gods.
Kislev will fall. It will kneel before me, before Chaos.
You think too small for one so powerful.
Have you forgotten, Seer? I killed Ursa.
Why stop at Kislev when you can give Chaos the world?
No more twisted words.
Wait! Ursa lives!
What?
You lie.
You lie!
And dying by your hand, but alive! The Shadow has him still!
Be'lakor all along.
Will pay for his betrayal.
I mean, the god bears power. It is yours for the taking. So take it.
The realm of Chaos cannot be entered. No one can cross the maelstrom.
I can. I will guide you back to the Forge of Souls. All I require is one drop of Ursun's blood. Finish the job you started, mighty God Slayer.
Liar, not a god slayer.
God Slayer. World Slayer. Ursun's power is mine.
So, to be frank, he's a bit of an idiot.
He really is. Okay, so here you are. You're a newly raised demon who didn't quite do everything that he thought he did, which completely gets manipulated by good old advisor there. And you're like, oh, it was Be'lakor. And his first thought is, Be'lakor, damn it, I should be able to do something. Be'lakor's as old as the freaking world almost. What the hell are you thinking? I'm just going to walk up to Be'lakor like it'll be a piece of piss. Piers being elevated to a demon prince has done nothing more than make poor old, new, elevated demon prince that he is a bit dim.
Yeah, it's quite funny to me that so when he turns to a demon prince, he's operating under the understanding that he's already killed Ursun, and now he's going to go down and conquer Kislev. And that's pretty much his game plan. Like, that's really as far ahead as he's thought. And the advisor's like, first of all, you're a demon prince. That's a pretty small starting space. Like, you could think much bigger than that. And the demon prince is like, no, I'm not falling for this classic villain trick. I know this one. I'm not falling for this. And then he's like, actually, you didn't kill Ursun, and Be'lakor still has control of the power of a dying god. And that's what gets him to be like, what? I'm gonna go throw down with the strongest of my kind, who's also feeding on the power of a god. And the advisor's just like, all right.
Particularly that
whatever.
You should be better than this god slayer, having just told him that he wasn't a god slayer. And he's like, yes, I am a god slayer. It's like, no, dude, you're not. Dude.
You're a god wooter. we can call you that.
You're a bit of a god hurter. But
it doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
It doesn't quite, does it? No. So that was deeply amusing. I am left by the end of that cinematic going, the dude's an idiot.
Good old Daniel.
Poor chap. I mean, not only is he completely seduced by it and completely, one could argue, twisted by chaos into doing the wrong thing, he then becomes an idiot.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I think he stays relatively accurate to his intelligence level before turning.
Okay, he was always an idiot.
Yeah, this dude gets manipulated relatively easily because he's a little bit power grabby, but he's consistent in that flaw, which I can appreciate. He has a hanger-in for strength. A Photap, been listening to the Gotrek and Felix audiobooks recently. The constant mentions of Ulrich and the lack of Ursun is fascinating. Yep.
It is. You got to remember that when Gotrek and Felix were written, Ursun didn't even exist. Ursun was a new addition that was added to the Kislev lore by Gav Thorpe, who also added a couple of other deities at the same time, Tor, for example, and Daz. And later, when other writers were to come in, so Graham McNeil, when he did the Ambassador Chronicles, for example, he would add some extra details for those. But loosely speaking, those gods just didn't exist for the vast majority of the writing of Gotrek and Felix.
Yep. But it makes it extra fun to like speculate like why certain areas would stay more true to Ulrich rather than Urson and like resist the cult
Right.
and stuff like that. And Dr. Scala, my favorite aspect of the young demon prince is his blind and rampant arrogance. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually quite enjoying it for exactly that.
Yeah, as a recently turned demon prince, it makes sense for his character, especially because his ascension to demon prince was very swift. For most chaos characters, it takes like decades or centuries or even millennia.
Toil!
Yeah, to walk the path of chaos, the path of ascension and become a demon prince. That particular demon prince, he like speed tracks that shit. Let's see, Reverus or Orc. I am the god boo boo maker. Yeah, Daniel.
Poor old Daniel.
Also, fun fact, there are a lot of memes about that particular character getting his ass handed to him by Boris because he was Tsarina Katarin's lover before he turned into that. Which always leads to a lot of really funny memes of him trying to come down to invade and Boris being like, are you the man that fraternized with my daughter? And he's like, oh no. Oh no. Just get the shit kicked in by Boris. All right, so next up we have a really, really, really good one, lore-wise.
Oh, I'm excited.
Grand Cathay, the spirit. Spirit.
Oh. Grand Cathay, a vast empire to the east, ruled by powerful creatures, dragons who can inhabit human form.
You are gravely mistaken. We have no interest in a mere god's power.
No interest in power to use against the forces of chaos.
I am Yao Ying, the storm dragon, older than the gods themselves. You are here for a greater purpose. This map shows the energy of all things. There should be harmony, but the world is unbalanced. My younger sister, Shenzhou, bringer of light and hope. She ventured beyond the Norscan mountains, but was lost. Without her light, darkness prevails, and our family has no comfort.
Though I feel your loss, the Dome of Fates provides no insight to your sister's whereabouts.
Urson knows he witnessed her fate.
Then why does he not tell you, Iron Dragon?
There is mistrust between dragons and gods.
If we save Urson, he will tell us how to find Shenzhou.
Let me serve you, mighty dragons. I can reach Urson. Lead you to him before it's too late. For one drop of his blood.
Vampire!
Your destiny is to guide us.
Destiny!
One drop.
Oh,
The
nice image.
armies of Cathay must breach the maelstrom and march into chaos. Balance will be restored to the world
He's not done yet.
when Shenzhou is returned to you.
Okay.
Oh, Bearing's awesome. I love her.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really fucking cool things here. Starting with just that Cathay is gorgeous and the voice actors fucking killed all their parts in this. And one of the things that's really, really interesting for me, just starting with, is that this shows a really unique situation of the Tome of Fate is not able to produce an answer. It has no idea where Shenzhou is, and it can't track her.
That amused me.
Which is fascinating and opens up like a whole bunch of questions about like why.
Very
like,
quickly
where'd she
answered.
go?
Gods and dragons don't get on.
Yeah. But, and that would also could explain such a fun little tidbit of like part of why Tzeentch is so obsessed with Grand Cathay. of this.
You definitely
realm.
you get a sense there that they can't be read in the same way, that they are beyond what lies with fate. The very strands, the pattern of existence that Tzeentch, as the great spinner of fate, the architect himself, the great architect, can't see what is built before the dragons. I kind of love that.
Yeah. Also, can we just talk about Miao Ying's throne room? Like, goddamn.
Ah, goddamn, love that.
Damn. But this whole quote of "I'm the storm dragon. I'm older than the gods themselves."
Yeah, that put a smile on my face. And true.
Yeah. A, true. B,
100%
hard
true.
fucking quote. C, I love that he shows up and he's like, "I offer you the power of Ursun, a dying god." And they're like, "A mere god's power?
God,
We don't need that."
I'm a dragon, man. Get
You
with
think
the program.
You think I care about a god's power? Like, that is such a fucking awesome just series of just. I love the advisor so confused too. He's like, "What? Like, for real?"
But again, I think that's beautiful because it suggests that the setup that he's been given by the good old tome there is not full and complete and completely without understanding of the dragons.
You know what?
This feels like the first one that he's walked into and is a little bitty blind.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it never occurred to me that this is the only cinematic where he doesn't know what to say.
He has no idea.
He's got nothing. Like, if his goal was, "I must convince the dragons to let me help them," he's completely fucked.
Yeah,
the only reason he's able to get this is because the dragons go, "No, we have a use for you, but you're gonna do what we want you to do. You're not here for like whatever your crap. Like, I don't give a shit about your crap." Which, that means, Sartorial is a complete blind spot for the Cathayan dragons.
I think so. I think that's a beautiful setup for both Tzeentch, Sartorial, the whole process of fate and what the dragons represent. And in some respects, also suggests that maybe the dragons, much like, if you go over and look at LAWhammer, how we set up the Path of Shadows over there, much like anything else that can't be sensed by the ruinous powers themselves, are potentially the only things that have any chance of saving the Warhammer world from ultimate destruction, because it is fated to go.
Speaking of the Warhammer world, this interpretation of how the dragons see the world is
I love that shit, particularly because it's super old one-y as well.
Yeah, like the world looks like some kind of mechanical orb with like a bunch of holes in it. As opposed
I was like, that's a choice.
Yeah, like, because you could like see the star systems and you can see like the various like lines of power around the planet. And it's like the fact that the dragons, like, they almost seem to see the planet as the way, like, where the wood elves see like the weave, the dragons instead see the harmony, like the balance of the world.
The harmony of the spheres.
Yeah, the harmony of the spheres, exactly. And they're looking at the Warhammer world going, it's not harmonious. Because we've lost now Shinzu, which I will, when they do things that make me happy, I will give full props to Games Workshop. That I really appreciate that Games Workshop allowed CA to, that they were willing to use Shinzu, because Games Workshop originally only designed the 5 dragons, and CA came to them and said, "Hey, for like the storyline, can we use one of the missing dragons to like move the story?" And Games Workshop kind of hemmed and hawed on it for a bit, and then ultimately came to the decision that, okay, we'll help you design one more dragon. And they came up with Shinzu, who is, not playable. You never actually see her in game. You only see like some representations of her. But we know that it's kind of heavily implied based on little bits and tidbits that she is either the youngest dragon or the second youngest, with Zhao Ming potentially being the youngest. Zhao Ming is definitely the youngest boy, but Shinzu is the youngest daughter. And it's interesting I think it makes a lot of sense that the dragon that represents Hish and like controls Hish and that part of the balance going missing would be huge. Like, that's bad. Losing Hish is really, really bad. Because right now Cathay is basically operating, like, if you consider the dragons representing aspects in a really important fashion, Cathay is now being forced to only work on Gairan, Azir, Akshi, Shaman, and Gur. So they are missing light, shadow, and death because those dragons are lost or missing, essentially. Though the death dragon, of course, is hanging out in the thing.
Just bring you up, Chex Mixer, so you know you can ask any old thing you want. I'm not guaranteeing we'll answer, though.
Yeah, you can ask literally anything you
Literally
want,
anything you fancy.
If it's like, hey guys, what's your social security number? Like, obviously, you know.
I'm not sure I'll be telling you that one.
Yeah. But there is so many just fucking cool things of this. Of the representation of the planet is fascinating. The idea that Zhao Ming, I love that the advisor flat out knows that the dragons can talk to the gods, which is also a fucking fascinating concept. Like, he just very bluntly is like, why doesn't Ursun just tell you where Shinzu went?
Yeah.
And Zhao Ming's like, because he won't. Like, he refuses to talk to me. But it's like, wait, okay, so the dragons could just flat out talk to the gods? Like, once again, another super fucking fascinating concept that especially when it comes to the Cathayan dragons, they treat the gods as lessers. But the fact that they're able to just have dialogues with them, like, for mortals, like humans and elves and stuff, the idea of talking to a god is often like, yeah, your brain's gonna get scrambled, bro.
I think I'd take one exception to that. I think that there is a significant portion of the Dark Elves that would have nothing but supreme arrogance when it comes to the gods. They think of themselves better than the Chaos Gods, for example. They see the Chaos Gods and Greater Demons et al. As nothing more than minions to be used, which eventually may be used against them if they come during one of the great infiltrations of chaos when the Chaos Gates wax wide. But even then, they don't necessarily see them as an enemy. They just see them as yet another slave species. So, yeah, I'd argue that there's potentially more to it than that alone. But nevertheless, your point is 100% on point.
Yeah. And the other thing I really, really like is that Shinzu left. Like, it's not that Shinzu was taken or that she was captured. She left and went over the Norscan mountains. And what's fun is that Total War never answers why this is. Like, they never tell you the answer. The campaign quite literally ends with a cinematic where Ursun tells you where he's, like, you save Ursun, and actually, no, if I remember right, I think Ursun still dies, but you're able to use the power of the Spirit Dragon or the Death Dragon to basically talk to what's left of his essence. And he communicates where he last saw Shinzu, and you basically, a big expedition is launched to go after her. But it just leaves open so many questions of, like, why would she leave? Why would she go north to, like, the Chaos Waste or even the Realm of Chaos itself? Did her father and her mother send her there? Or did she go on her own for some reason? Because, you know, especially when you're dealing with, like, one of the youngest siblings who's known as the Bringer of Hope, like, that implies that they're very powerful, they're very special. But it can also, hope is lost, which is kind of, but it also, like, there's an implied idea of, like, was she sent there, or did she go, no, I have to do this? Like, there's some higher cause I'm fighting for, which can lead to making bad decisions, in the name of, like, you know, fighting for what's good or whatever. There's a lot of really, really fun doors they kind of leave open for people to just explore on their own. Which I just love. And there's so many fucking cool, like, just moments in this.
Love that one. That's a good one.
Yep. All right.
My favorite one so far. And at this point, I would just like to say that it has made me want to play as Tsarina Katarin, and it's made me want to play with Cathay significantly more than I did before.
Oh, yeah. And these cinematics do the perfect job of getting people hooked on these characters.
Yeah, it gives you an idea of who they are almost instantly.
Ooh, that's nice. So,
okay, Kostaltyn did not immediately drag me in. I'm poor old, I don't want to call him Daniel, but
Daniel,
I just don't want to call him Daniel. But regardless, I was not left going, I really want to play that guy.
So his actual name is just Yuri.
Yuri. Well, yes. Yeah. Poor old Yuri, I did not fancy his. Let's be honest, the way I play Total War, he's probably my best option because I better play him realistically, like an idiot. So it'll be fine.
All right, so next up we have the skull of the bear.
The skull of the bear. Whoa! Khorne time, Khorne time. Da, 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 da.
jagged rocks and rivers of fire. Here, I found the greatest of all bloodthirsters.
Oh no, here we go.
Yeah, good fuck, Commander.
Yep, here he
Bones of
comes.
all that walked or crawled littered his lair. Skarbrand, raging gun. I had but a moment to make my case. The time it took to sharpen his murderous blades. The demon had spent millennia harvesting skulls to earn the forgiveness of his master, the Chaos God, Khorne. The skull of Ursun would gain his favor.
What do you know of Khorne's favor?
Nothing,
Blue eye?
mighty Skarbrand.
Interesting.
I am
Look how
but a
terrified he
servant,
is.
ready to aid your slaughter.
I can smell the magic on you, seer. I'll take your skull.
Why take mine when you can have the skull of a god? Let me
Or
guide
both.
you through the maelstrom to where Belagor imprisons the bear. Take his skull. All I want is a drop of Ursun's blood.
Vampire!
Keep your skull. Give me the bear. One skull for the throne. The rest are mine to collect.
Not only vampire, but bullshit. He's so dead.
So, this is so funny of like imagining Sartorial sitting in the book going, how the fuck am I supposed to convince Skarbrand not to just kill us both immediately?
Yeah, and for the first out of all the cinematics so far, this is the first one where I didn't leave it going, yep, that seems like a relatively realistic potential out situation. This one, you're just left going, yeah, skulls for the Throne of Skulls, it's time for him to be dead. You just pretty much can't see this one turning out well for the advisor.
Yeah, this one is definitely they're like, all right, like there's no way this would work, so we'll just make the best
No, just
version we
run
can.
with it. Exactly.
He
I
has
feel
to be
sorry
in
for the
campaign,
pro writer.
I will
You
say-
do feel that there could have been a better way of dealing with it, like for example, a go-between to begin with, or something, so that he could have demonstrated who he was by murdering everything, and then eventually reaching the advisor who comes up with the god or something. But we not only didn't get to see our great Khorne demon murderalizing anything at all, he just pretty much having a chill out
I know,
time.
that would have taken too many
sitting
animation
down.
frames.
I mean, shush! You're ruining my fun. I am really interested though with his two different colored eyes. Does that get justified at any point?
Yeah, well, so they don't like explain it, but there's some art that talks about that the reason that eye is a different color is because that's the side of his face that he lands on when Khorne threw him to the earth. So that's why he has two broken horns on that side, and his skull is exposed. So it's like his eye got damaged, which is why it's a different color. Which is just fun.
Sure,
Which
I'll
I-
do. Sure, I'm
yeah.
cool with that.
Yeah,
Great.
this one is super fun. I do love that like the advisor is doing his little speech, and the second he's like, oh yeah, Khorne's favor, Skarbrand's like, bitch, like what? You don't know shit about Khorne.
I so love it. Look at
Yeah,
him.
the funny thing
He's
is that
so dead.
Skarbrand is actually proven right at the end of his campaign, because the way his campaign ends is that he gets Ursun's skull, he offers it to Khorne, and like it's taken for the Skull Throne, but the only thing Skarbrand gets in response is Khorne. So like Khorne
the laughing of dark gods.
like most of the campaigns end with the character getting what they want. Skarbrand doesn't get what he wants in the end, which is
so
really fun.
I am again going to do that thing. Is everyone ready to say Skål? Torn directly from Michael Moorcock. And having said that, let's move on nicely. I really enjoyed that one. I enjoyed it not because it was in any way realistic. I enjoyed it because it was fucking cool. So what's next?
Yep. All right. Next is, I believe, the body of the bear.
The body of the
This
bear.
one, the voice actor for Kugath is so good. He is so good. And I love the way Kugath is portrayed.
The
Liking it so far.
gallows tree, dwelling of Kugath, father of plagues. There is no greater brewmaster of phage and pox than he.
Hey,
To describe the squalor of the fetid sewer is impossible. I risked my very flesh to tread it. Kogath thought me but another specimen for his grotesque experiments. Before the rot consumed me, I offered something finer.
Here he comes.
Belagor has imprisoned the god bear of Kislev.
Oh, how delightful. If Belagor has struck, there'll be plenty of carrion for me.
Ursun himself lies dying, fatally wounded in the Forge of Souls.
A dying god. The finest corpse from which to brew a plague.
A god pox, mighty Kugath.
A god box. You tempt me, old man. But I cannot reach the Forge of Souls. The maelstrom prevents us.
I can reach it and guide you to the dying bear.
And why would you do this, little healthy mortal?
For a single drop of Ursun's blood.
vampire!
That is my fate.
Blood for you, the body for me.
I get so many vibes.
Okay, so I
this-
love that.
Yeah, in this scene, I get such hardcore Ursula vibes from like the cartoon of the Little Mermaid, where they're haggling over the bargain, and when he just goes done, and like all the effects go off, it's like oh, I love that. Of Kugath treating this like a genuine. It's funny how courteous Kugath is compared to all of the other characters.
Yeah, this one was believable. Unlike the last one. This one I could see coming to pass. Nurgle is a completely different deity. What doesn't really make a great deal of sense is how the hell the advisor's still walking, having moved within the vicinity of a greater demon.
Sartorial creating his COVID bubble and chanting like a madman in the
that's the only thing that in any way can make it reach this point, and then you're just left with the fact that he's not so completely falling to this pox that should be riddling within him is enough to turn him into a curiosity, something that should almost certainly be experimented on. All of that aside, really liked it. Nice setup, nice nailing through, really nicely voice acted. Never seen the use of phage that way before, because it's a word that basically just means eat. To eat something, like phagos. And I had to go look it up because I'd never seen it used that way. But bacteriophage, as in a phage, it's a disease that eats you from within, often shortened to phage.
That's
never seen that. So I was like, oh, look at that. I had to go look it up because I was like, phage just means
Good
eat.
job, writers. Good job.
Phage means eat. Why on earth do they use phage and a bacteriophage? It's a very modern term, sadly. It's a term that would never be used in this
you
era.
can tell somebody
but
pulled
it's a
out their
greater demon.
thesaurus. Someone's like,
totally.
what can I use besides just these?
But it's a greater demon. They're extra dimensional entities anyway. So they can happily have just stolen it from 40k head lore that he's got squirreled away in the warp somewhere. Job done. It's a phage. What's that? Just means eat in classical, but let's just not think about it.
Some other things I actually really liked about this. The whole concept of the Godpox, which was actually like a big running narrative for Kugath in 40k around the time this game came out. Where he's like obsessed with the concept of a godpox and making a disease that can infect gods, and fantasy just being like, yoink, we're gonna steal that plot thread because it works really, really well.
It's when I think 40k and Warhammer work best is when they're not afraid to take the best of each and use it rather than doing what is often done, which is one, let's keep them very discreet. They don't touch. It hurts them to steal. No, it doesn't. They are all part of the same stable of games.
Yeah, they're part of the same family, even if they
Exactly.
don't like
There's
to admit
absolutely even when they don't like to admit it. Yeah, quite. Or alternatively, those who are like, no, adding anything from 40k weakens Warhammer, makes it worse. 40k of Warhammer, nonsense. Some of the very best bits of Warhammer have come from 40k, and some of the very best bits of 40k, in fact, I'd argue most of the best bits of 40k have come from Warhammer. So yeah, not an issue as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, some other really fun notes about this that I really like is or just the last thing I'll say. I love how derogatory it sounds when Kugoth calls him a healthy. Like he says it like it's just it's just dripping with him being like, I don't like that. That is an unfortunate ailment you have to be healthy, little mortal.
Let's bring this one up. Yeah, Face Octopus, you're absolutely right. They because I looked it up and looked it on the inside. It's basically a disease virus that moves in and replicates only by working through and eating bacterial cells. Super fascinating. I'd never seen bacterial phages used that way, so I was super happy. Phage, eat.
Yep, and Textpixer, cool question, a good question. Is Kugoth the only top grader demon that did not receive a model? No, Nakari also did not have an exclusive model.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame.
Which is weird considering how important the two of them are.
Yeah.
But
Nakari in particular, I would have loved to have seen a good model.
Yeah, Nakari absolutely should have had a fantasy model. And it's like, considering how important Kugoth was in fantasy and 40k, you would have figured he would have had one, but guess not. All right.
No. Any super chats in between? Any super chats?
Let's
get them because if you're being so nice to send us stuff, we're as well to say hi.
The super chats aren't showing up in the starred comments anymore, which is weird.
Okay, they are for me, or at least some of them are, I hope.
I've only got
the last one
in there.
Okay, so it's gone weird.
Let's see. No, not
the
that
last
one.
You did.
Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one.
Did we get that one?
We were here. We were here. Funny how his name, Daniel, means only God can judge me. That is hilarious and definitely was not intended by the person that made the Daniel.
Yeah, damn straight it wasn't.
That's hilarious though. Like that's actually a really appropriate name for him.
That is really good.
Eagle Wing, I love the concept of the Daniel faction. I really hope they come back and overhaul the faction to fix the multitude of issues plaguing the faction. Yeah, I'm working on a big video for that. Like a proposal thing to really fix it, because it's supposed to be the Demons of Chaos and it just doesn't feel like it. It's a very weird faction right now.
I quite like the nature of the characters that was presented in the trailer that we watched the other day. Just the idea of being able to take the character in almost any direction was just, I thought, pretty cool.
Yeah, the mechanics of the Demon Prince are fantastic for him. The problem is he is the only mechanic for the entire faction. Which leads to feeling very disjointed. And it's something I think they need to fix. Cameo, in your opinion, should the Monkey King be a legendary lord, legendary hero, own faction, part of Cathay, need some guerrilla warfare? Definitely a legendary lord and definitely part of Cathay. Because that's just how he fits best. You have to keep in mind when you're dealing with legendary lord, the Monkey King is so powerful, he managed to fight off the Dragon Kids and took the throne of the Dragon Emperor. He took it from them. Like, this guy is freakishly powerful. So he should absolutely be a legendary lord. And plus, like, he leads like a really notable sub faction, being like the Monkey Wars and everything. But we have a lot of really well established canon from like loading screen quotes and developer interviews that the Monkey Warriors make up a notable portion of Cathay's armies, especially in the west and the west and the south. So yeah, he should just be a faction within Grand Cathay. Because the Monkey Warriors fight for Grand Cathay, even though sometimes they're, they have a bit of a trickster vibe to them where sometimes they're a pain in the ass.
Monkey!
Hammond, Shinzu and Urson were making Draco bear babies. Oh no. She ran out with a god. That's why all the dragons are so pissed. It's a forbidden love story between a dragon and a god.
Urson, wherefore art thou, Urson?
Yeah. Jason, thank you very much for the support. What about a dragon-blooded Mulan-esque hero? You could absolutely do that, though I would note that granted, this is my Disney interpretation of Mulan, not the actual myth or not the actual like historical or or like famous portrayal of Mulan. I've never read the actual story, but in my experience, her story would probably work better as someone who is ultimately mundane but rises to greatness through great effort and being someone who has a heroic spirit, as opposed
work.
Yeah, as opposed to being someone who is just compare like the Disney movie versus cartoon versus the live action, where the live action was like, oh, she has this amazing power in her all along, and she's like got godlike power and she needs to hide it, yada yada, and it was like a really terrible story that everybody hated. Whereas the cartoon was just that she was just a normal person who rose up against extreme adversity and extreme circumstances to be a hero.
I am sadly now singing
that.
the song in my head.
Yeah. I think if you wanted to make something really fun out of her and something really impressive, you would want a normal human who proves to be worthy and better than many of the Shukengun because of who she is as a person, as opposed to what lies in her blood, which is a very different story.
And somehow I'll make a man out of you.
Korenchima, Miao Ying's tone implied she's not cold and aloof enough when it comes to Shinzu. Well, she's cold and aloof from a human perspective, which, you know, she's a dragon.
And I think that it's your cold and aloof characters need to have points where they have a bit of a chink or a break in their armor, or that cold and aloof just loses its interest. You've got to have that little bit where it breaks a little, and you go, "Ooh, there's an intensity lying behind that, which betrays the cold and aloof facade." So yeah, I quite liked it.
Yeah, so she definitely, but yeah, like her being genuinely upset that she's lost her sister. Like, there's only so many of them, first of all, and Shinzu seemed like she was by far the most beloved, considering that Miao Ying literally says that without damn it, Andy. The idea that,
I was halfway through drinking there.
Yeah, Miao Ying says that without Shinzu, without her light, her family knows, they know no peace. Like, she clearly brought comfort. She was the light in their family. And that she's gone, truly. I think for Cathay, that is really their signal that it is the end times, is that they've lost Shinzu.
Yeah, I quite like that.
Yeah, that would probably be like a major story thread for them. Gelt is up to something in Cathay. Yeah, he's busy getting
screw that guy.
He's busy getting his medal on with the Iron Dragon.
That's certainly something I'd...
Nerd gaming. Very dumb question, LOL, but since dragons could talk to gods, what would happen if one went to talk to, for example, Khorne? I mean, theoretically, there could be a story there of one of the dragons talking to the likes of a chaos god. I don't know what they would talk about or what would be the matter of discussion, but could it have happened? What's really interesting is if you think about when the chaos gods first arrived, like when they came bursting onto the scene in the Cataclysm, if there was...
But they didn't, did they? I mean, as we covered in one of our streams, they were already there for hundreds, if not maybe thousands of years before. They were speaking to the dragon ogres.
Oh yeah, that's actually a really good point. So
in our Dragon Ogre stream, we covered that. They were speaking
that opens the idea that I would imagine the dragons did talk to the greater powers before the Cataclysm. And based on how things went down, probably didn't like what they heard.
Yeah.
But as for how that discussion would go, it's hard to say.
I imagine it would almost certainly have been with go-betweens rather than directly with the gods. Manifestations, like, for example, something like Kairos rather than Tzeentch itself. Tzeentch itself, after all, being a multifaceted hydra of an entity, how could you ever really speak with it? But you could most certainly speak with its very intelligent and also potentially diplomatic emissaries.
Yeah, which for those, despite all the jokes, Khorne does actually have surprisingly diplomatic emissaries in the form, some of the heralds are surprisingly diplomatic. A lot of people don't know this, but actually like Skulltaker or Uzul, he's actually surprisingly polite. A lot of people are like, oh, like he chops off heads, like he shows up and follows laws of challenge.
Yeah, and he drinks tea and he has a top hat.
What?
Okay, wrong lore.
This must be some second edition lore I'm just not aware of. Okay, we did
He
that
is Mr. Peanut.
Let's see. King Zeno. If they add anything to the Pirate Coast, I hope we get Scretch Half Dead as a hero for Noctilus. It's kind of interesting to me how Scretch Half Dead has become such a popular fan request, because I'm going to be honest, I don't get it. Of like, he's just an undead Skaven, whereas you have like Vangeist, who's like an actual ghost fighter, and you've got like the Tomb King character, you've got like the Chaos Dwarf, who's like been partially infused with the Black Kraken. Like there's all these other characters. I'm not sure what it is about Scretch that has so many people being like, yeah, Scretch. But I know when I originally talked about it, I actually proposed there's a character mentioned in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay that is, I can't remember if he's a Strigoi or a Necrarch. I'm pretty sure he's a Strigoi who sails a ship with a bunch of Strigani on his ship. Who I thought would actually make for a really cool character because he'd be a very different kind of vampire. Because the thing with Scretch is, I'm going to be honest, I don't tend to be on Team Scretch because I feel like people would not be satisfied with just Scretch. They'd be like, okay, I want Scretch.
I know the next one.
But now I want, well, I want more of the characters, but I also want like undead Skaven units. Like I don't just want the hero.
Yeah.
Now I want undead Skaven, and like that, I feel like that's gonna spiral outwards. And CA is gonna be like, no,
expensive.
We're
it's
not
just one model. It's now become 5. It's now become 10. Yeah.
So I think that would be the tricky part, is that the only way that would work is people would have to be genuinely satisfied with only getting Scretch. And I feel like a lot of people would not. They would turn it into an RNSA situation where a lot of people don't like RNSA because they're like, oh, she needs more living units, but that would require them to like make more models.
Yeah.
Farseer Eredrel. I think Kugat didn't get one because they couldn't get his throne into the model with the Great Unclean One, so they created Rodigus. Nakari was probably replaced because he's mostly irrelevant in 40k. Yeah, well, it's less about like kind of modern stuff, and it's more that these characters have been around for a while.
Yeah.
Like, because like even just thinking about like the old minis, like if you go see the old really haggard like metal greater demons, like it's interesting
them so many times.
Like there was a lot of people don't know this because many of y'all are new to the hobby with like Total War and stuff, but if you go back to like 3rd edition, there were so many fucking special character models all over the place. They were everywhere. Like there were so many special characters you've never heard about that, or like someone will bring up on like a weird edition. 4th edition. Like people will bring it up on a weird thread, but they used to publish like you used to be able to.
Oh, you mean all the other? You mean the old ones? Yeah, they're freaking every White Dwarf brought out new ones.
Yeah, like you used to be able to go to your local Games Workshop and they would have this book that was like a foam book, but it was like literally this thick, and it would have just all the serial numbers of all the different bits and models and stuff, and you could just thumb through it, and it had literally dozens upon dozens upon dozens of named characters that got those singular releases, maybe had a sentence to a paragraph of lore, but they made a mini for them. Like they were just making minis just all over the fucking place. It's not like it is nowadays. It was such a different atmosphere back then, which is really interesting.
I remember that well. God, I'm so old.
Yeah, but you know, obviously I couldn't afford it because I was a fucking child.
And obviously I could. Now back when I was a kid, and I was working for Games Workshop. Back then, when they were all metal models, and so we're talking way back when, before it turned into white metal. Back when the majority of the models were made of lead alloy, and I was working for Games Workshop as a staff member, I could buy by lead weight, and that meant that instead of paying for the model, I paid for how much it weighed. Meaning that the special character inflation did not apply. And I remember going down to what was the mail order department, because you could just go down to the mail order department and work your way down the shelves and just put them in a box and weigh it. And it cost so much per kilo, lead weight. And that was just the best. I still have a metal undead army to this day, the equivalent of around about 6,000 points worth of old metal models, because it's about the only army I didn't sell when I eventually left Games Workshop for the first time. I worked for them for 3 times and worked for them freelance after that. But those were the days back when I got paid next to nothing by Games Workshop, but all the next to nothing I got paid immediately went into lead weight models.
Yeah, well, hey, there you go. Rubber Rosa Orc, which Dragon Child would you want to see next in Total War? I personally would like to see Yin Yin. I think like the Monkey King and Li Dao will come together whenever that happens, because their stories seem very heavily interwoven. Yin, I will admit, I really want Yin Yin because I love failed children, like failed daughters or failed sons as a meme, or as like the idea of the Dragon Child that is so brash and so like I don't think arrogant's the right term, but like she's so desperate for the approval of her father that she's like waged wars that really shouldn't have been waged. And she has a very unique personality among the Dragon Children.
I want Yin Yin.
Yeah, and also
that's what I want. I love that character.
I'm really hoping as well that she's going to wield a bow to kind of emulate her mother style of fighting. And that would just make her by far the most unique of the dragons, where like she has a bow when she's in human form and then she turns into the big beast dragon. Like when you just look at the various wins, like the 2 dragons we have left being the fire dragon and the beast dragon are going to be wildly different compared to their siblings. And I'm so excited for both of them.
Me too.
Felon, appreciate all the stuff you both have done, your positivity. We have Nurgle trolls now. Will we get perfumed Slaanesh trolls and leather-clad giants? I doubt it.
Yeah, you tend to find that Slaanesh is always a difficult line for Games Workshop and their various licensees to walk. So difficult that Games Workshop themselves find it tough, in that they create stuff and then sometimes go, I kind of wish I hadn't created that. Damn it. And then not produce it to any great degree, or even advertise it in White Dwarf as they put the release out and then never talk about the release again. So yes, Slaanesh can be a toughie.
Yeah, I do think you'll see things like the greater, like the demonic beast mount of Slaanesh, which I affectionately call the boob snake, but that's not its technical name.
Wow, the beast of Slaanesh is I painted billions of those as well. I've always rather liked that. I had liked it all the way back to 3rd edition. I used to have a unit of about 20 of them.
Yeah, I feel 100% sure you'll get those as the equivalent to the Rot Beast Knight or the Juggernaut of Khorne or the disc riding Tzeentch guys. And you'll get Slongors, though there'll be a Total War version, not the AOS version.
Okay, a little story on Slangors. Yeah, this is going back a little bit. A long time ago, when I was working for Games Workshop, there was a miniatures competition for just the staff, where you all got to paint something, and we got sent down a whole bunch of miniatures. Included in that was basically a box about so big, and there was about 30 or 40 models in there, and some of them were the old Slangor models that never got released. You could find out why they weren't released. Their horns, were exactly what you think their horns were.
Nice. But yeah, there will probably be some really interesting things, but I do think they're gonna, I mean, we know,
I've got a feeling this Slangor won't look like that.
No, not like that. Yeah, no. We do know for a fact though that although I think it might be pushed back to focus on some other things, that there is a Slaanesh DLC planned for some time in the near future. Some bloke 8077. To be fair to Yuri, the Chaos Gods shower him with gifts and power, also potentially the first undivided demon prince since Be'lakor. Yeah, it was actually kind of a big deal when he was initially revealed, because in 7th and 8th edition lore, there was no such thing as an undivided demon prince except for Be'lakor. He was exclusive. Or actually, no, I think it was, if I remember right, I think in 6th edition it was exclusive, and then 7th edition said, no, you can have undivided demon princes, and then 8th edition said, no, we changed our mind again. You can only have Be'lakor is the only one. And then Total War was like, okay, no, we're gonna allow you to have undivided ones because it just gives us more options.
Yeah, totally.
Which, like, it's always made sense that there should be undivided ones running around, because like me and Andy have talked about on other streams, there's not, like, the 4 greater powers are not the only entities in the universe that can create something like a demon prince.
Yeah, they're like 4 peaks in a large mountain range, and they're the biggest ones.
Yeah. Good day, gentlemen. Missed 2 weeks, been filmmaking.
Oh,
Hoping you've been
glad
having
to hear
a good
that.
time.
Still, Lori, I hope it's been going well.
Yep. Incarnate of Morgar. I think the Monkey King should be a mercenary faction that shares similarities with the Dogs of War whenever we get them in certain mechanics. I will agree to disagree, only because it's been very strongly coded throughout, like, all of the Cathay loading screens and, like, because for those that are like, where's all this Monkey King lore coming from? It's all in the loading screens. If you just go, there are ways you can go through the files to just look at all the loading screen text, and it's massive amount of the stuff for the Monkey King. And it's all about how he's part of Cathay. He's part of Cathay's defenses. Like, he fights alongside Li Dao against the Naga of Koresh and against the Kingdoms of End, and helps defend the borders of Cathay. It's just that he, like, if you think of, like, what Archon the Black is to the Tomb Kings, that's kind of what the Monkey King is to Cathay. Like, he's technically part of Cathay, but there's a lot of conflict and disagreements. But he ultimately uses their roster, and there are various forces within Cathay that are sympathetic to him and may even like him more than the dragons because they think that it could personally benefit them more in some way, shape, or form. Now, I will say, I don't think the Monkey King gives a goddamn about harmony. I feel like he does not give a fart in the wind about harmony, and that probably drives the dragons crazy. Chex Mixer, thank you for the bits. That's very generous of you. Recently finished listening to Gotrek and Felix stream, and I had thought about the AOS Gotrek books. What if Gotrek finds Felix Veos turns out to be a very minor god of bards and or travelers? He ends up awakening, has been moving around to help people as a strange wanderer for who knows how long, so he can end up being knowledgeable and still be on a similar power level to Gotrek. That would be cool. I feel like it would be a bit of a stretch for how Games Workshop tends to like to tackle things, because I don't think they want someone on Gotrek's power level. They want someone who is a grounded, like, maybe hero level, but probably a little below hero level fighter within the mortal realms who is supposed to act as your translator, essentially, to be like, wow, look how crazy this all is. Look how powerful that thing over there is. Look how wild this thing that just happened is. You need a character that's deliberately kind of crap. That way you can show off how crazy Gotrek is and how crazy the bad guy is and all that stuff.
Agreed completely.
Yeah, so that probably would not work, unfortunately. All right, let's get back into...
Right, let's get in. That was a long pause. Thanks Thanks very much, everyone. You are all the best. Let's see what's next.
Next, we have the Sorrow of the Bear.
Sorrow. Hey, color code.
It was in the Palace of Ruin I found Nakari, the Keeper of Secrets.
I actually really like this one.
His den of excess was no place for mortals. With every step it whispered promises of all I desire. But like others before me, my soul yearned to be ensnared. But I knew if I succumbed here, he would own me for eternity. I made my revelations quickly, before my senses gave way. Yet Nakari found the tale of Be'lakor and Ursun tiresome. It was a secret he kept already. As my mind clouded, I made a final gambit. I would guide him through the maelstrom to the bear's deathbed.
The bear. Yes, tempting.
I love that little flute.
The sorrow of a dying god. Yours to treasure.
A treasure to cherish. I want it. You will give it to me.
One drop of Ursun's blood. That is my fee.
Advise me well, and you will have your desire. Fail me, and I will have your soul.
So, this one's got some really cool things going on, kind of in the background. I love this guy being branded with the mark of Nakari, because A, it's an elf, fun.
It is.
B,
a very buff elf as well. Look at him go.
Yeah, he's ripped. Looks like a white lion, a Krace or something. But it's impossible to make out what's being offered here. but you can just see how they're just lavishing on him, and he just makes a pact. It's like, ooh, we shouldn't have done that. But the idea of being marked by N'Kari because he owns your soul for eternity, great, awesome, love it. I also love the whole thing that the advisor comes in and is like, I have all this information. N'Kari's like, I already know. Like, there is nothing you can tell me that I don't know because I keep all secrets.
Yeah, I quite like that. I was less enamored with his entire voiceover for the opening. It felt a little bit unlike the other ones where it tended to be a bit of give and take throughout the course of it. It was just him going, hi, I arrived, and then I spoke to him for a bit, and it was okay, and then I spoke a bit more, and I wasn't entirely happy. I spoke a bit more, and then N'Kari goes, and you're like, all right, fair enough. He's going to say something. For a moment there, I thought, maybe they haven't hired the voice actor for this, because it took quite some time before he actually spoke at all. Yeah. Again, it felt a little bit like there was going to be some discomfort with how exactly they were going to portray this one. So they just kind of wrote their way through it. And when I've reached the other end, excellent, we'll have N'Kari say a couple of things and we'll be out of here. And it was a bit of a shame because once N'Kari started talking, we got more N'Kari art. It was like, hey, look at that. How fucking cool this is.
Has the least amount of dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a shame.
Yeah. I do like that. It's interesting of all the things he could have offered to N'Kari and how like CA was sitting there going like, what are we going to give N'Kari that would make N'Kari actually do this? I really like that they go with it's the sorrow of a dying god. Which when you play through N'Kari's campaign, it quite literally ends with N'Kari capturing the dying moments of Ursun, dying knowing that he's like leaving his people and that they're all going to suffer horribly and all this stuff. And he encapsulates it so that he can just savor it forever, which is horrifying.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's like, oh, that's really gross. N'Kari sucks.
I mean, he does. And I mean,
he does.
It does. It's not really a he, is it?
Yeah.
I'm a touch sad that the voice sounds so exceedingly male. It would have been nice if there'd been an undercurrent of something else running through it. So you were just left with this, like, you know, a little bit like a piece of chalk going down a blackboard where you're just like, oh, that's not quite right. Something that leaves you a bit unsettled, but nevertheless, it was still pretty goddamn cool.
Yeah, when he's in game, he has a weird effect on his voice. I don't know how to describe it in game because it's like a bizarre form of reverb or something. I will say I love his little face tentacles.
That's pretty cool.
Really unsettling about those things.
I'd also like to suggest to him that he go plays Baldur's Gate if he's really into bears. Just saying. Just saying. If you're really into bears that much, dude, go play Baldur's Gate. I'm sure you'll be fine.
You know, I feel like because he doesn't have a nose, I feel like he must use these to like taste something in the air. Like he senses things like that. I feel like they're sensory organs, which is very uncomfortable to think about.
He should be going off and hunting down some extra members of the good old House of Anarian.
Yep. All right. Next up, we have one of my favorites because it's the only cinematic they ever made where the advisor takes a battle stance because it seems like the advisor is about to throw down. It makes me love it. It makes me laugh every fucking time. Just imagining this old man being like, all right, let's fucking go. So this is the eyes of the bear.
The eyes of it. Vampire! Pardon me.
The Silvered Tower, refuge of Kairos Fateweaver, the most powerful of all demon sorcerers.
Okay.
I found the great conjurer searching for a spell to pass through the maelstrom, but his scribe scoured every book in vain. I told him of Ursun, held captive in the Forge of Souls, but he dismissed my wisdom.
We already know of Bellacor's plot, for I see the past, and I see the future.
But you are blind to the present. You did not see the maelstrom.
Here's the present. Happy birthday.
Through it.
The Tome of Fates holds the answer, the spell we search for. Kill him, brother. Take it.
Only I can use it. The tome is bound to my soul.
We can unpick it. No, let him serve us. For one drop of god blood, I have foreseen it.
Peck out the eyes of Ursun. Use their power to view the present.
The sight of a god. The past, present, and future. All will be ours to see.
So Kairos, interestingly enough, probably I think has the most dialogue, maybe next only to Kugath. His is I just love that the advisor, like you could his tone is so much more combative with Kairos, where he's like he just feels like he's ready to fight Kairos if he has to.
Again, though, if we're thinking about him effectively being advised by the book, he's going to know exactly what to say to an entity such as this.
Yeah, I do love that Kairos is the only one who knows what the actual source of his knowledge is. It's not the advisor, it's the book. And B, that when the advisor's like, only I can use it, Kairos immediately is like, yeah, I could break that spell, bitch. Like,
I'm straight.
You think Sarthorial can save you? I will unmake you to. And then his future head's like, nah, we don't need to bother. But I will say Kairos, in my honest opinion as well, gets the most powerful ending, because in the ending he does pluck out Ursun's eyes and puts them into that tongue that has the eyeballs coming out of it.
Nice.
And it allows him to see the present. It gets rid of Kairos's only genuine weakness, which is like, oh fuck, that would
Love
be
it.
really bad for the world.
Know everything past, present, and future. Love it.
Yeah,
No, like that. So, overall for the video, again, I was a little bit worried at the beginning because it was like he's just going to narrate it again, isn't he? He's just going to, but he didn't. And that was nice. And we got to get a nice little bit of Kairos there doing his Kairos-y thing. Again, you're just left with, dude should be mutated. It's all very mundane in this place. It's all very much like just some random tiny little wizard's tower, which is interesting as a choice.
Yeah, because for those unaware, all the locations are within the Chaos Wastes. They're like just little notable locations because obviously they can't get across the Maelstrom. They can't get into the realm of chaos. I find it funny that Kairos is the only one who seems to be trying to get back across, where he has all of the little horrors running around in the background, just running over all the books, and nobody can find anything. You can tell Kairos is just pissed. Yeah, it's interesting, especially because the tower looks a lot bigger on the inside than it does on the outside.
Way bigger.
Because like the outside is pretty humble. Like it just kind of looks like a little stone tower with some Tzeentch.
Yeah, I'm a bit bemused if that's supposed to be, say, the Silver Towers of Tzeentch. Yeah, no. Let's just say it's our tower. I mean,
well, so it's it's actually very specific in game. It's not the Silver Towers. It's just a location known as the Silver Tower.
Okay, I'll let that one go then, because then it could just be some random thing they made.
It's not a silver tower. It's silvered tower, and it's
the silver tower sold. It's great
because they do talk about the silver towers in game, but you don't get to see any as of yet. Hopefully, we'll get them with Egrim von Horseman.
That'd be pretty freaking cool.
I'd
be well behind that.
Yeah, that's the big fan hope. And then the last one, and then we'll get back to super chats and stuff. Is the corpse of the bear?
The corpse.
This one I like a lot. I think Greasus in his regular trailer is portrayed as just kind of a goof because they're like, oh, he's farting and burping and stuff.
Actually, I'll say that for all of these. The Nurgle trailer, for example, it stands in stark comparison to how Nurgle's often portrayed in the other trailers where we saw, where Nurgle was often just popped forward as just a joke, a big green farting jolly. Oh, look at me come! I'm just a giant joke. Oh. Where he came across as properly sinister, calculating, with that slight hint of jollity sitting behind it. It's really good. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how this one comes out.
Yeah, so I think this portrays Greasus marvelously. So let's get it. Scrag is hilarious, just a goofy cameo. God bless him, but Greasus is really good. Oh, sorry, flesh.
The ogres feast to honor Greasus the Over-Tyrant. Their appetites are ferocious. I must be wary.
Better be wary.
Time's up, wizard. No, put him in the stew.
Wait! Untold power can be harnessed from a dying god.
Power? Ogres take what they want. What more power do we need? Oil the pot!
Face me!
Please wait! The god is up there! You can't devour it!
Quiet! A bear, you say?
Sounds tasty.
Shut up!
Sounds tasty.
And you meet God flesh.
Enough for you, your warriors, and your god, the Great Maw.
I can smell it now. Roast God ribs.
A feast like no other.
You're no meat-eater.
It's
What's in it
Santa!
for you?
My book reveals a path to his deathbed. I will show you the way for one drop of Ursun's divine blood.
One drop. But ogres get the rest.
That is the deal.
So the thing that the thing that always made me
My book.
I love about this is Greasus comes off as like he just immediately goes into a deal once he realizes there's something he wants. He begins negotiating. But I love that when the advisor is like, "Oh, I want one drop of blood," Greasus like you can if you hear the effects, he moves so fast, like terrifyingly fast, to be like finger on his chest of like you get one drop. Like you can tell it's almost hurting Greasus to give him anything, which I love how much of just a greedy bastard he is.
Well, you know, he's an ogre.
Of Ursun's divine.
That teleport, like
Yeah.
it's almost like an anime moment of it being like,
And I'm going to say again, but he's got some proper Santa energy going on there.
yeah, he does.
He really does have some proper Santa energy, doesn't he? You know, ho,
Yeah,
ho, ho.
he's a big man. I love his little throne. Like the whole like he's just sitting on a pile of gold. But Greasus, the thing that I enjoy very much is that once again, this is one of the real ones where the advisor. This is very similar to the Katarin one, where he tries to go in and it just immediately starts going south. Of just Greasus like hearing him talk and being like, "Nah, eat him. Like, don't care, eat him." And I do love that he makes the power proposal and that Greasus has the same response the dragons do. Just because it's from an ogre perspective of just him being like, "Oh, I give you the power of a dying god," and Greasus is like, "Are you calling me weak? Like, you think I need power? I will end you." Which is a
This one,
fascinating
though,
perspective.
It feels quite different to the Dragons one, for example, where this one, it feels like, you know, I'm doing a thing. It's scary, but I've done it. Where with the Dragon one, he felt lost.
Oh yeah.
You know, in terms of tone. Where this one, you know, it feels like I've been advised by the book. Oh no, this isn't turning out quite as I expected. I meant to say this now. Oh, it's turned out all right. I'm okay. Excellent. Let's move on to the next step. Yeah.
Yeah, the advisor's voice acting. The advisor is like such an underrated voice actor. Like,
Oh,
he
he's
does
great.
a really good job.
I
like, you
particularly
can-
enjoy his work.
It's this scene when Greasus is like quiet and the guy's like, "Oh, sounds tasty. Shut up." Just the popcorn gallery of the ogres. But this moment where like he gets Greasus to start contemplating eating, the voice actor of the advisor sells it so well. You can hear the confidence of him being like, okay, I'm good now. I got him.
Yep.
Because like prior to this, he kept trying to find ways to slow Greasus down from trying to eat him, and it was just not going well.
Mm.
The advisor did not care. And this one also has a very similar has kind of the most horrifying ending where they quite literally chop Ursun up into just meat slabs
And eat him.
yeah. Which is pretty fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
But
You just
ogre's
imagine
gonna
what would
ogre.
happen to him. Eat a god. Poof.
Yeah, and then I think the final scene is literally like they're having this big feast by the Great Maw, and like they're eating what they can, and then a good portion of it's about to get chucked down into the maw, which that would also probably have some really fascinating and horrifying consequences.
That would have some pretty astonishing consequences. That'd be awesome. Hey.
Yeah, and that brings us to the end of the main Warhammer 3 intro cinematics.
So I found that really quite fascinating. Some of those I really liked. Some of those were entertaining, although if you thought about them, you start realizing that they kind of break under scrutiny. Some of them were super characterful. Others were less characterful and they felt more rushed. Some of them really actually felt very rushed. Like, I've got a whole story here to tell. I'll just have the advisor say, and a story happened.
So if you had to rank them, what do you think?
Cathay's right up there. Really enjoy Cathay. My issue with the Greasus one is if we rewind just about 30 seconds from there, maybe 20, and we see all the ogres around. Yeah. Some of the ogre art just didn't do it for me, so I found it hard to concentrate. I really like Greasus, but some of them, the heads were a bit weird in comparison to the bodies. It didn't look quite right. Like the artist wasn't quite
honest,
sure
I have
how they worked.
never looked at them before.
Yeah, I really like
watched
Greasus
the
though. I
cinematic so
thought
many
Greasus
times.
was nailed. But like, yeah, some of these just look, their heads are out of proportion and they look weird in comparison to some of the models. In fact, I'm going to argue that they've drawn from the models and not the art. So if you go into the art, for the background art. So instead of using the art that you get in the army list, they've gone to the miniatures, and the miniatures all have oversized heads, whether they're human, whether they're elf, whether they're ogre, whatever it is, because you need to paint them. And
this
their
artist
proportions
probably had
are
a
different.
mini like sitting on their desk when they were working.
Absolutely. So everything looks a bit off. If, for example, this was for a book that I was producing, and I received the sketches, I'd have said, go back to the source art, please. You've not quite nailed it. It needs to look a little bit like this and this and this. Nevertheless, this one's sort of in the middle for me. It was all right. If I go through the Tzeentch, Nurgle, Khorne, Slaanesh, all of those, I'd say they're just below this one. None of them quite nailed it for me because they never felt like they were in the same danger. For all, here he comes, big Khorne. It didn't really feel dangerous in the same way this does. Look at this. This is arriving before a court. The Kislev one, it was a whole court. Then you've just got yourself this one demon that for one reason or another chooses not to kill him upon sight for daring to come into his presence. And yeah, you've got a reason for why they wouldn't. He's got a big magic book of magic bookiness. But that isn't shown. And that's just left for you to try to use as an excuse rather than it actually being the book told me I had to do this, or there was only one route through this, or I was going to be dead, or the book literally activating and keeping the demon back while he lays out what might be a route through this. But none of that happens. It's just he comes up and he persuades a demon prince of Khorne and wings him round. You're like, really? That's the route you're going to go through with your storytelling. Nevertheless, I really enjoyed it.
I just imagine like someone being like, I feel like we need to do more writing here. And someone looks over at him and is like, you get like a minute, maybe 3 tops for this whole thing. And you got to get them to the start of the story.
Yeah,
Make it quick.
You got yourself 4 greater demons there. And so they were my least favorite, not necessarily because they deserved to be, but because out of all of them, they felt the least realistic. Where the Kislev one nailed it. Really nailed it. Really enjoyed Katarin's one.
I think for me, it's like Dragons of Cathay is the top one.
Yeah.
And then I think for me, I like the Katarin one second most. I have a really strong affection for Kugoth and his little thing, so I probably put Kugoth third, then Ogre's fourth, and then I probably would do Kostaltyn fifth.
Yeah, Kostaltyn was a bit empty.
The rest of them are kind of eh.
Yeah, I think I'm in broadly the same place. Kostaltyn, I wasn't left at the end of the Kostaltyn one going, I really want to play this character, where with the Greater Demons popping out, you were left going, well, they're going to be kind of fun. Even though I'm a little bit surprised that the advisor is still advising. But so, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. It has left me very clearly wanting to play Cathay in a way that I wasn't before. So I'm going to say that was 100% successful.
And then I think we can do the victory cinematic.
Oh, yeah. Spoilers!
So we can do... so we have the common start. Oh, this person's very clever. Okay, I like how he actually did this. So all of them have the exact same starting cinematic, and then it transitions to a different scene where it changes depending on the character. So the whole thing with the campaign is you go to the Forge of Souls. You have a really big battle against Be'lakor, who's been sitting on a throne where he's literally having Ursun's god juice pumped into him, and trying to become a god.
Rude.
Yeah, and you have a big final showdown with Be'lakor. But before we do this, super chats. Because I almost forgot. Okay, down here. Nakari sucks hard, Andy Law 2024. He would know.
Oh dear.
Still loading. Hope you're doing well. Duck Deeds are many Dogs of War regiments of renown in Warhammer 3. There's a fair number. There's a good number. Like, you got Long Drawn Slayer pirates.
Reorder me.
Oh god, I'm trying to think.
Reorder.
There's a couple kicking around. Not as many as you may think, but there's some kicking around. Jason, thank you very much for the generous super
thank
chat.
you very much, Jason. That's enormously appreciated. Thank you so much.
Are there examples of true names used outside of binding demons? What if Nippon could rewrite their warriors' true names to elevate their power to stand on par with Cathay, or have an equal/symbiotic relationship with any spirits local to their relation? So I will say, are there examples of true names being used outside of just binding demons? Yes. The idea of manipulating someone or something's true name in order to influence like how powerful they are, I would say is definitely a concept you could explore, but the consequences and the opportunities it would fuck up and not go well are extreme.
Yeah, so there is a certain cosmological aspect to all of this, and that is that if one could divine the true name of something, one could presumably control it. But the problem is that the vast majority of material creatures, people like you, me, or those elves and dwarves and various other material entities that kick out there, and elves arguably aren't even truly properly material. But regardless of all that, they are inconsistent, where demons are pure entities of emotion and reaction that work in a particular way, which means that they can be named. They can be understood. Mortals kind of can't, because they're changeable. They react and move and evolve and become something different at different points. So certain entities are going to be pretty much impossible to name. It'd be a little bit like going and comparing basic algebra with nuclear physics. They are quite different. So what you think would be the simpler entity, your average Bob who just happens to be walking down the street. Hello, my name's Bob. He might have the equivalent equation of a book the size of, the Deus Sigma itself for his true name, where the demon might have one which is no more than maybe 5 to 10 syllables, because it speaks directly using the core language of the Warhammer world, what sits behind it all. Anaquaean, if you wish to use that as the term, which is the ancient arcane language of the elves, you could argue it totally isn't that, but that'll do for a quick way of describing Anaquaean. And that language speaks to the truth of the world, and that's what's used loosely for spells. It's what demons speak, because they speak in purely conceptual nature, and some of those words are truly horrible, and they can literally change the nature of the world by speaking. And that's what wizards do. They can create change in the world by speaking certain terms and using magic. And ultimately, that all boils down to the whole true name thing. So that's one giant way of saying, because thanks very much, it was a really nice super chat. One giant way of saying, could you control someone by learning their true name? The bigger question is, could you even say their true name if they were a standard mortal? Demons are very different. Etheric entities are very different from material entities.
Yeah, to alter your question a little, what would probably be more possible would be the idea, if Nippon, in the case, if you're making your own version of Nippon, of the Nipponese trying to manipulate the true names of spirits in Nippon to change their nature and to make them into something else, which could be incredibly powerful, but would also be horrifically dangerous and difficult to do. Fun idea though. That's a really cool concept.
Yeah, totally is.
Here we go. Hammond. FYI to Andy. CA misspelled Kairos twice. Once they called
They
him
didn't,
Cairo.
did they? Did they call him Cairo Feet Weaver? Please tell me that you're
Or-
not just making that up. I
no,
hope that's true.
So I don't think it was. It wasn't in the cinematic, but there were instances where CA like put out articles or something where there was a
Kairos
misspell.
Fat Weaver.
Yeah,
That's
so they
even
called him
better.
Kairos Fat. I remember Kairos Fat Weaver. That one was really
Cairo
funny.
Fat Weaver. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
So in my headcanon, his name is Cairo Fat Weaver, who is the Midas the Mean of Unclean Ones.
Oh, I that's just brilliant.
That's super funny.
Thanks for
Yeah.
the mistakes.
Yeah, I remember Fat Weaver. That was a funny one. Would Greasus eat the maw if he could? He's an ogre. He would eat anything if he could.
I mean, the if he could is the big part though. It's a little bit like saying, "Hey Andy, would you eat the world?" And it's like, well, I mean, if you could, but yeah, he can't.
I'll try anything once.
Quite.
Michael, that's Greasus with 400 speed. Yeah, that was one of the greatest bugs ever, was go-kart Greasus with 400 speed, which was horrific. He was so fast.
Meep meep. Vroom.
Peter, what would Chaos Wars want from Urson? They are not part of the Urson campaign. We will probably do their thing is that they discover the blood of Hashut, which is
As
like
you do.
which basic we'll watch and talk about that, probably not on this stream, but in a different stream. The best way I can describe the Chaos War campaign is that they basically discovered that it's theoretically possible to create a engine or a drill that can force open a pathway to the realm of Hashut itself, which they do.
Sure.
That's the whole point of their campaign. Is they literally they basically break the wall of reality to get to a realm of pure energy and use that energy as a fuel source. And that is as nightmarish and apocalyptic as you imagine it would be.
It sounds great.
Anti Manpa. So sorry if I mispronounced that. Thanks for all the wonderful streams, Anti and Sotek. After 2 long years, I finally finished my Daughters of Cain army for AOS.
Oh, well done.
If you're ever going to make a video of Marathi, yes.
Oh, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Marathi's awesome.
It's very early for this for last season of Lorebeards, but if you go watch our Malekith episode, Marathi is a big talking point in that episode.
Yep, totally is.
Unbound Lore, would you guys ever do a lore tier list ranking legendary lores by how much lore they have? Yeah, that is something. So tier list is something we want to do for some of these Wednesday night streams at some point.
Totally
I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after or the week after that, but at some point
it'll come at some point. We've got time yawning ahead of us.
Yeah, Bang Porpoise, love the streams. Have rewatched far too many of the times to admit. Well, hey, we appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Describe the culture shock an Estalian knight might feel in Kislev. I'm working on a Woofert campaign. Hail the Toad Lord who rules over Gelt. I don't know if you want to tackle that.
Okay, right. So, at its very core, we don't just have 2 different cultures, because inevitably they are 2 different cultures. We have 2 very different lands that have shaped these cultures. On one side, we have Estalia, and different versions of the lore will present slightly different versions of Estalia that range basically from, oh, it's just medieval Spain, innit? All the way over to, holy hell, this appears to be a jungle land. What the heck? There are very different versions. Go read Fel Cargo. That is certainly one version of Estalia that I won't forget. But regardless, you've got a hot, quite different version of the land to the cold, horrible land of Kislev. So the first thing that they would deal with is the fact that the world that they've moved into is completely different in terms of how they have to dress, how everyone else is dressing, in terms of how the culture itself expresses itself. Where down in the south, it's far more laid back. They're fully aware that when midday comes, it's far too hot, so they just chill out, man. Wait for that time to pass, and then they get back to whatever they're doing.
Gotta take your siestas.
Yeah, exactly. Where compare that to the everything is hard that you get up in Kislev. Everything is tough, and death comes swiftly. So they are so much less bothered by so many things that would bother people down in the south. Honor is much less important in some ways, but far more in others. The whole culture is different, and I would generally suggest just go read up on some of the Kislev stuff. Go read up on whichever version of Estalia you're using, because there are multiple versions, and then just have a think. What's it going to be like when I meet these people and they don't treat me the way I'm used to being treated, and they treat me like an outsider? How do I respond?
Yeah, 2 additional notes that I'll say just for funsies is that A, imagine having to go from drinking Estalian wine to drinking Kislevite kvass.
Or kumis, okay, which is basically fermented milk. That's
gonna be fun. And the second is keep in mind that you're taking a Myrmidian more than likely and putting them up in Kislev, where like Myrmidia has pretty strict laws and ethics about how to wage war. Kislev does not. Kislev is you do what you do to win.
Survival.
Yep.
Yeah, they are so very, very different.
Farseer Eredrel, poor Vashtor getting his forge wrecked. Yeah, Vashtor, aka Discount Hashut. Yeah. Argoth. Kairos is my favorite intro, but I'm very fond of the Lord of Change aesthetic. Also my favorite faction in game. Hey, yeah, that's totally fine. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, when you see your favorite character pop up, you're like, I don't give a fuck. I'm having a great time.
Yeah, totally. I'm 100% agreed. I mean, I love. I don't just love.
For me, that's why the Kugoth one rates so high, is because I just fucking love Kugoth.
Exactly. I adore Greater Demons of Tzeentch in general, and I had in my old. I'll tell you how much I liked them. In my old Chaos Tzeentch army that I had when I was a teenager, I had 6 Greater Demons of Tzeentch.
Jeez, I'm sure everyone fucking just loved you. Monsieur Manatee, I read a book that interpreted the true names as something changeable with personalities for mortals, and predictions are true until the name changed. Yeah, that's what Andy talked about earlier. So that's
literally what I was very poorly describing, because it's relatively early in the morning here in the UK, and my brain is a little bit fudgy in comparison to what it would be like if it was
and if
6
you actually
o'clock in the afternoon.
If you want to see Andy explore that brilliantly, go watch LAWhammer. And you actually don't have to wait, because relatively early on in the LAWhammer show, you get to see how they're trying to deal with the prophecy and stick to the restrictions of the prophecy, while there are other forces that are trying to change subtle things so that the prophecy is just no longer accurate. And it's really interesting to watch that going down. New World guy, I'm working on a Cult of the Possessed warband for Mordheim, and I was wondering if fish beastmen could exist. Not only could they just flat out do. If for instance, if you go read the Sons of the Knights of the Grail, I think book, which was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition Bretonia book, which you can find very easily online. It has a whole section for one, I forget which kingdom it is, but for each of the kingdoms, they provide like a little special monster. And it tells you like their lore and their profile and stuff. And one of the ones they talk about are the Lakemen, which are a bunch of beastmen that have amphibian parts or fish parts instead of your typical like goats and herd animal parts. And they're like a whole stable species of beastmen that are fishy, and they're very nasty. And then still loading. Wait, if you eat a god, would you have magic poo? Probably. I don't know. Sure.
He's still loading.
All right.
The important questions are always manifested through your will. the lore must be answered. Is the poo magic or not?
Hey,
and if you smelled it, would you gain some magic poo power?
Did you know that canonically in LAWhammer, elves shit gold? Did you know that?
Shit gold.
There's a character that flat out explains that in one of the episodes,
and it's 100% true.
Yep. That's why Ulthuan is so wealthy. Yep. All right, here we go.
A battle to draw the gaze of the gods. All breathe a sigh of relief, for Be'lakor is vanquished. Godhood is lost. As was foretold, shackled within the depths of the forge was the body of Ursun, the once mighty god of Kislev.
Okay, so this is the canonical ending.
A queen stands before her lifeless god. Vengeance cannot fill the void, left by his passing.
Orson, we did all we could. I am sorry. Kislev will fall.
Magic bear!
Stirs. The faith of a queen sparks new fire within his still heart.
Look how pretty Kislev is in
With
spring.
Urson's roar, Kislev is restored. The crops shall grow, the beasts will fatten, and the motherland will prosper once again.
Okay, so that was Katarin's.
So the bit that amused me most was, so her faith is what brings them back, and her faith is expressed like this: Kislev's doomed.
Yeah, she's like, well, we're fucked. And Urson's like, what?
We're all fucked.
Hold on.
We're all dead. Kislev's coming to an end, and the magic bear goes, magic bear, fooled you, and he comes back again. It wasn't her faith. What a load of nonsense.
The advisor's sitting there going, what? Well, this is bullshit. How faith, I guess? Like, he's trying to describe to somebody else what happened.
Faith did it.
I love the idea that he's like looking in the tome of fates and he's like, wait, I thought Urson was dead. How did he come back? And Starthor was like, faith, I guess?
It was totally her faith that he couldn't die. But didn't she just say that we're all doomed and we're all going to die because the god's dead? No, maybe, no.
Yeah. So, we're going to pretty much just skip the Boris Ursus and the Kostaltyn ones because they don't really show anything different. It's pretty much
largely the same. Yeah.
It just has like slightly different text about how like just little things.
Yeah.
But here we jump to the Demon Prince.
Uh-oh.
The Demon Prince stands before the lifeless god.
So now he's actually
Godslayer Part 2.
Hand that fired the fatal shot. The divine corpse, now his to plunder. The Demon Prince finally has what Be'lakor's lying tongue once promised. The fathomless power of a god. Ursun is dead. Long live the black-hearted god of Kislev.
So he takes over.
Interesting.
He fills the power vacuum and becomes the new god of Kislev. Which, all right,
That's certainly a thing that happened.
yeah. That
interesting.
one is like, oh, it's how abrupt it is too. It's like, oh, he's the god of Kislev, and we're moving on.
Yeah. I have questions that were not answered here. I mean, for example, how did he manage it? Because dude's a dick. He's not very clever.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
Yeah,
all right. That was a thing. What's
On
next?
to Cathay, which has a pretty fun one.
Wow. I'm
A
interested.
dragon stands before a lifeless god.
Loser.
All is not lost. The spirit wind is harnessed. Even Ursun must speak once more.
Hi.
I love their little snow outfits.
Ursun fades forever, but his last kindness will not be forgotten. A vision of the lost dragon child, waiting for her sibling's light.
That's all you get. They just give you that little
Really?
teaser.
Man,
it ends on a cliffhanger.
These feel super rushed in comparison
are.
to the openers.
Yeah,
I mean, compare and contrast. I mean, I'm just imagining for the first time completing the game. Okay, I've won my campaign. I've finally hunted down this bloody bear god. I've got all the way there. I've kicked in every demon known to man. And here we go. I'm about to get my victory credit. And it feels like a cutscene from Street Fighter in 1990. where you've got Chun-Li slides in. Hi, I'm Chun-Li, slides out. What the hell? This seems super rushed, and I'm a god now? Okay, fair enough. This feels a little bit like the studio was pushed for time.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Well, especially because, like, the characters themselves don't show up in any of the cinematics. Like, the Katarin one, Katarin is, like, actually there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
totally.
and she gets dialogue and everything. None of the other characters do.
It's like they did the first one, and then how long did that take you? Oh, we were on that for 2 weeks. 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And we're going to need more art. How much more art? Well, we're going to need approximately 10 pieces for each one. Then we're going to have to animate it, voice act it. Yeah, no, you're not doing that. Well, but it's the end. Yeah, how many people will actually get there? Most people will buy the game, play the first bit, get frustrated, and stop. So yeah, don't worry about it.
To be fair to them, the percentage of players that actually finish campaigns is very tiny.
That's exactly my point.
Most people get to the point where they're like, all right, I had fun with this. I'm going to go start a new campaign now.
Yeah, so how many people are actually going to see these? They just forget that there's dicks like us who go and watch over it later, pore over it, and say things like, they really didn't bother, did they?
Yeah, like the Cathay one is so unsatisfying because it's just a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you were looking for the Dragon Child? Well, here's your breadcrumb. Go
the
look,
Dragon Child's over there.
That's it, the end.
Princess is in another castle.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do to you.
Oh, man. What's next? What's next?
Next, we got the ogres.
Oh, okay.
The
It's cow time.
over-tyrant stands before a lifeless god. The divine corpse.
He's not there.
Still fresh to butcher.
Nope. He's elsewhere. Oh, okay.
An ogre's greatest desire, god flesh.
I love his little
the meat of meats.
Urson turkey leg.
Once the tribe have gone,
Sure.
Urson's remains will
what
be
part of
fed
the bear
to
is
the
that?
great maw. Respite from
You know,
the
like a little
eternal
niblet on one of his
gnawing
fingers or something?
hunger.
That's it. The end.
Is that
they're
it?
like, yep. They're like, look, you get to eat
Wow.
some, and then you throw it in the mob. Done. It's like,
Okay, yep.
all right.
Sure.
Yeah,
That's a thing that happened too.
Yeah, we can skip
Oh,
Scrag
look at
because Scrag is basically the same. It just has him there instead of Greasus. But
Scrag
his
was
art's
pretty cool there.
nasty.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Scrag,
Like
Scrag
that.
looks I will say Scrag got a big redesign for Total War Warhammer. His endgame model is horrific, like in a good way.
Yeah.
Because they really explored like how they could try and make him really stand out and unique and stuff. And one of the things that they did that I really like is his gums are really like pronounced and his lips are pulled back really bad. So like his gums are sticking out with his teeth and it's horrifying looking. Like Scrag
Excellent.
is genuinely terrifying to look at, which is great. He should be. He's practically he's like a fucking slasher film villain. All right, next up we got Skarbrand.
Okay, how's Skarbrand going to do it? Well, he's not going to stand before the
exiled
god.
one stands before the lifeless god. The divine corpse, still fresh. to
Hypothetically,
plunder.
he did. The advisor had a bathroom break, came back, and Skarbrand was already gone. I like this art piece though, right here.
Oh, nice.
The skull of a deity for the skull throne. Skarbrand's supreme offering to the blood god.
Look at the size of that skull.
Might he finally earn Khorne's forgiveness?
Nope.
From the endless darkness, there is only laughter.
I love Khorne just laughing at him. That, in my opinion, is a really good campaign in for Skarbrand.
Yeah,
It's literally-
that makes sense. I like that. Plus, you're playing a demon. It's what you deserve. No, love it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Shame
no,
on you.
that's
How
cool.
dare you
Yeah,
win.
yeah, totally. No, I'm totally cool with that. That was all right. Kugath pretends to stand before him.
Stands before the
Kugath doesn't
lifeless
stand.
god.
He's on his
The
palanquin.
divine
He's chilling.
corpse, still fresh to plunder.
He's got his motor chair.
With these divine ingredients, Kugath Plaguefather shall realize his darkest dream. A brew potent enough to blight the gods themselves. Behold,
God.
a god pox unleashed upon the heavens.
Sure. At least they got Kugath's voice actor to do laughing for it.
You
even
know,
though he
that's
doesn't say
something.
anything. Yeah, but
And who's
yeah,
to say
this,
that wasn't from another take, though?
yeah, this would full on be a full apocalypse scenario. And then it was so funny is you watch the cinematic and then it just shunts you back to the campaign and it's like, hey, you won, but you can keep playing if you want. And it's like, oh, well, do I get like the Godpox as like an ability? And it's like, nah.
Oh, man.
It's like, oh, all right.
Well, you know, I tried.
I feel like this would completely alter the fabric of reality, but okay, whatever.
From the heavens,
Nakari.
the
Nakari's a pretty good one.
Arch-Tempter stands before
Like
the
Nakari.
lifeless god.
Because his is so like
The
selfishly
bear's
motivated.
anguished spirits still lingering among the shadows.
Nice.
Divine sorrow, captured and preserved. Person's torment
Nice.
is treasured and savored. At the prospect of Kislev's coming suffering, Nakari moans in rapture. Glory to Slaanesh.
Yeah, that one I find
Wow.
very funny because like Nakari, despite arguably being one of the most dangerous of the four powers presented, has such a selfish goal that it doesn't actually have much of a wider ramification on the world.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect end for a character like that. It's good.
Yeah. And then-
I'd have preferred more, but
oh yeah,
good.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, but good.
And certainly last
The
but not
great
least.
oracle stands
The great
before
oracle.
the lifeless god.
Of course.
The divine corpse, still fresh to plunder.
This one's just gross.
One head sees the past, the other the future, but both are blind to the present. The stolen
Oh, I'm in the
eyes of
way.
a dead god.
Hold on, let me get out of the way. How do I?
You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Just for a
Banish
second?
me.
Are you all ready?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodbye. Aye, aye.
Both are blind to the present.
Aye,
The stolen eyes of a dead god at last grant Kairos Fateweaver full sight. Behold,
Those little googly
the
bear
new
eyes.
master of
looking
time.
around.
Okay, I mean, that was definitely a choice that they made for how to make that look cool.
Yeah, it's also really funny to me how like massive his skull is in the Khorne trailer, but then his eyes are somehow tiny enough to fit in Kairos' tongue. Though I do love the final title they give him since he can see the present now, which is the Master of Time. Which is like, yeah, he would be, and he would be genuinely unstoppable at that point. And then the most important bit,
Wow.
which you will really like. So a lot of people miss this, but me and Andy have talked about it extensively because if you play throughout Warhammer 3, you spend a lot of time with the advisor, but there's no Raven. There's no white Raven following him around. It doesn't exist. But once you complete the campaign and you break the curse on the book, remember that you break the curses on the book. And the advisor is an idiot and didn't realize that there's more than one curse on that book.
The new master of time. One drop of Ursun's blood was enough
Vampire.
to break my curse. The taint purged from the tome of fates. Now it is mine to command. A pure white crow, the lone witness to my ascension.
Ascension,
Come,
huh?
little one. What fate awaits
Fate.
us?
So, yeah, he fucked up.
What fate away? He hasn't ascended, loser.
Yeah, and then there's I wish they had included it in the cinematic because it would have been so fun, but there's an epilogue that you get in campaign where you have to wait like 1 or 2, like 2 to 3 turns. And if you keep playing for 2 to 3 turns, you get an epilogue text, which is the advisor. The bird starts talking to him. And he's like, oh my God. And the advisor suddenly feels himself rapidly aging even more. And he feels his like flesh, like withering up, and he goes blind. Like his eyes go milky white and he loses his sight and he goes completely blind. And the bird reveals itself to be Sartorial the Everwatcher, and tells him, you are my pawn now, and we have much work to do. And the advisor realized he fucked up big time.
He
And
let that bird out.
He got played like an absolute buffoon.
Yeah.
Which is perfect. Like, I fucking love the advisor. I love him so much.
Yeah, me too. As we have discussed, I think, at length in our advisor stream, which if you haven't watched, you absolutely should go watch because it's super fun. I like this character. When it very first popped up in the first game, I was very much taken by what clearly the character was, which was a cheap answer to how we can advise all of the factions with just a single individual. Right. So how does the advice work? I don't know. It just does. And I remember, yeah, totally. I remember then going, yeah, this doesn't make any sense, and just running with it because you don't really care. But Warhammer 3 pretty much gave us a significantly better overall tale to then ground the character that was presented in one. That first cinematic where we get to see the book being opened for the first time and what happens to poor old advisor Bob, Dodgy Johan, and what then occurs afterwards when you get to see what happens. I think it's the Chaos War. Is it the Chaos campaign where you get to see what happens to him? His great
at
win.
The end.
Yeah. His great win. And then seeing this additional part just added so much extra context and made him an actual character rather than just being a useful plot device. So yeah, really like it.
And it was such a clever fix to so many questions that nobody was really asking necessarily.
Yeah.
But like the idea of like, oh, well, what was that book in the first game? Like, what was this weird chaos tome that turned him? And Andy Hall and them sitting around and going, what if we did answer that question? Which is really fucking cool. I like it a lot.
It is good.
And then explaining why doesn't he have the book in the first game? Well, he breaks the curse, so he doesn't need it anymore. Which is just nasty.
Yeah.
All right, so the last few super chat things, and then we're gonna get out of here because it's about that time.
3 o'clock in the morning here already.
Yeah, fucking I know, right? Chuck Spixer, thank you for the bits. I'm thinking of adding Myrmidia iconography to my Exiles of Bretonnia army since they are now using lots of guns. Would it be best to be? Would it be
half
best
and half
to be
heraldry.
half and half heraldry? Take some from both, or just have some of the units have one or the other for their heraldry.
I mean, there's not really a best. What I would suggest instead of going, well, I do one, the other, or whatever, is either A, make a story up, and that story by its very nature will answer it. Like, for example, this unit is this, so they have this heraldry. This unit is this, they have this heraldry. Or alternatively, just decide what you like the look of, and then justify it yourself afterwards.
Yeah, and I want to come back to this. Someone in chat pointed out that I misread this, so thank you for that, chat. What would the Chaos Dwarves want from Urson? Well, keep in mind that Chaos Dwarves are demon smiths, right? They are experts at taking etheric entities and making them into war machines. They would probably want to take an essence of a god and make it into a war machine or a magical artifact or something along those lines.
Okay, so here's one for you. Let's make a new housing case for Hushat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Using the bones of a god to create an enormous war machine as they go and I don't know, create a giant god machine. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that allows Hashit to enter the material plane.
Yeah, totally.
Oof. Yeah, that'd be spooky. Rich Fisher, I read that Mazdamundi made the mountains bordering Lustria sentient. So my question is, what the fuck? Actually, it's more what the fuck than that. So the Grey Guardians, which is the mountain range that separates Nagaroth from Lustria, didn't exist. There were no mountains there. But Mazdamundi read a plaque that told him there was going to be a big invasion, and he went, oh, well, can't have that. And he raised a mountain range that there was just open plains before then. He raised up a mountain range, and he used his sorcery to, yes, make it sentient, where if you try and cross the Grey Guardians, they will deliberately cause you to double back or to basically wander past that you shouldn't be, so you never leave. And the big old army of Dark Elves that went in there got trapped. They never left, and they starved to death, which is insane.
Lovely. Yeah. Lovely.
Especially considering like how like magically like well prepared they probably were to go to war with the Slaanesh and everything. And Mazdamundi just went, nope. Which is really spooky.
Yeah, the the Dark Elves are the absolute masters of magic until they meet Mazdamundi.
Yeah, and that's why when the Dark Elves invade nowadays, they use the underwater sea or the underground ocean. The Black Way, as it's known. Much simpler. Don't have to deal with Mazdamundi's bullshit when you go that way.
Quite.
Let's see here. Ricky Chapman just got our butt kicked by those dusty corpses. Armies.
Oh no!
Now, oh bummer.
I'm sorry to hear that, Ricky, but at least you got yourself a nice stream in the background where we were chatting about Lorebeards.
Those Tomb Kings, man, they're tough. They are for a bunch of dusty corpses. They are surprisingly competent. All right, and we're all caught up. So thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you had a lot of fun and enjoyed yourselves as we got through these. There's still a lot more to do. We might do something a little different next week. Like maybe we'll mess around with one of those tier list things and just have some fun, or whatever. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Make sure to join us this Sunday at the usual time, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 4 p.m. BST, for
on your channel, Tamarkan. Oh, it's Tamarkan. It's the big one. Oh, I believe there's something about Rising that we should be discussing when it comes to good old Tamarkan. Wait a minute. No. That's Andy a different stream.
Andy always says the most suspicious shit. Andy's sitting there being like, hold on, let me pull myself off real quick.
I'll just pull myself off. So I'd also like to say thank you all so much for dropping in our lovely little chats regarding all of those. I particularly enjoyed these ones because they were a nice mixture of good, not so good, and obviously rushed. But nevertheless, the lore that was seeping all the way through them was super fascinating to actually see play out in front of me, because a good chunk of those I'd never seen before. So it was super good to actually see them in practice. And also a massive thanks to everyone who sent super chats our way. We do enjoy eating. It is super appreciated when you do pop them over in our direction. So thank you.
Yes, we like being able to afford electricity and food and stuff. That's great.
Electricity is apparently a thing we need, damn it.
If only I could just exist and just
exist. Yeah, totally. It's all free.
Spartan.
Oh, partly there was one missing there. Was there a Spartan?
Yeah, I'll grab it. Thank you for pointing that out. Where is it?
I'll see if I can spot it as well. See who gets there first. Very sorry about that, Spartan.
Yeah, those Twitch ones don't get automatically flagged, so we have to pay attention. There it is. Who's your favorite campaign for the newest DLC? And if there was a Sotek community event coming soon, who would you side with? So yes, I'm gonna be talking about more than that in the future, but we are gonna be doing a big community event to celebrate Thrones of Decay, where people in the community are gonna get to fight each other and represent their selected faction, whether it be Dwarfs, Nurgle, or Empire. And whoever wins, we're going to do a couple little fun little bonus things to celebrate that particular faction. And as far as who's my... I have a really... I think Tarmakon is probably my favorite of the campaigns. Though I really like Malachi as well. Elspeth is definitely not my favorite. Like, she's not bad by any means. She's super duper fun and enjoyable. It's just not my preference of gameplay style. But I think Tarmakon I enjoy a lot, because the whole aspect of when you get all of Tarmakon's chieftains, you get a lot of like dilemmas where you get to see them having these lore based arguments and fights, and Tarmakon's trying to like balance the difficulty of maintaining a chaos horde while also ensuring that he stays top dog is really fun. Like, it's a really engaging mechanic that I think is just super enjoyable, because it's what it would actually feel like to run a chaos horde. Of you have all these annoying lieutenants who are constantly trying to fucking kill each other, and potentially kill you or disrupt you, and trying to balance making sure they behave themselves while also getting the optimal power in the situation. I also find it particularly funny because I remember the first time I played through those, I was like, oh, these dilemmas just give you like little bonuses, but whatever, it's fine, there's no consequences. And then there was a time where I picked an option, and one of the chieftains was so upset about the option that I picked that he attacked the other chieftain and wounded him, so I couldn't use him for like 4 fucking turns. And I was like, consequences!
God damn it, consequences for my choices!
Yeah, which was super duper fun. I like it. So yeah, Tarmacon is probably my favorite for that reason. Plus, I have a really hard time not being a big Nurgle fanboy. Nurgle is just really enjoyable. All right,
There you go.
Anywho, any final thoughts, Andy? before we head out?
Oh, FK came in just at the end there.
What? Oh, let us leave. Which one of these zany characters do you think my dad like? What?
Well, that depends entirely on your dad, FK. I mean, if your dad, for example, likes, I don't know,
How old are
Nurgle,
you, FK? Are you allowed
then
to
it
be
will
here?
be Nurgle things. So all I can say is, obviously, it's going to be Elspeth von Draken. That's it.
Based on what I know about dads, clearly Nakari. Just leave it at that.
And I'm going to obviously end with,
Dark
do
Deeds!
please, if you haven't already done so, pre-order Dark Deeds, our marvelous new board game from Warhammer Legends.
Guys,
and
summer's
Chambers.
coming up. A lot of y'all are about to. Most of y'all are finishing your exams this week.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be finishing, whether you're teachers or whatever, finishing with schooling as well in the coming weeks. If not, then you need something to do for summer activities, getting your friends together, playing games. Dark Deeds. And even, I'll put it this way, I asked the cute girls at my local bakery if they wanted to hang out and play board games sometime, and they're super excited about it, and I'm going to be hanging out and playing with some new friends and stuff, and Dark Deeds is going to be perfect for those kind of social engagements. So, get the fucking
There you
game
go. So
and
if
go outside.
you'd like to pick that up, you can grab the links down in the video description here on YouTube, or if you're here on Twitch, I imagine it has been posted somewhere in the chat at some point. It'll be out there. Thank you very much. And with that, I bid thee all a very, very
Don't miss
good
LAWhammer on Friday and
morning.
Mercury Publication stream on Saturday and LAWhammer on Sunday. Bye.
Oh, actually, on that one, if you're in my Rookery Discord, in fact, actually, the Rookery Discord would be perfect. If you're in our Discord, I haven't decided what I'm going to do this Saturday because it's going to be me that's doing the stream. So if anyone's got any ideas, fling them at me because I'm going to be deciding tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to be deciding tomorrow. I don't really care where you put it. Put it on LAWhammer, put it on Rookery, wherever the hell you find me. Throw it over in my direction, and we're going to be doing an hour stream taking questions on that particular thing. It probably won't be a Warhammer, pardon me, facing thing necessarily, but it might be. We'll see. I do talk about just about everything after all.
Yeah, like writing,
beyond that,
building, all sorts of
writing, world building, art, maps, whatever it might be. But beyond that, we will see you all later. Bye-bye.